It's your show. So
all right. So, Matt Gibbon,
that's me.
welcome to the Domestic Dad Podcast.
I'm actually excited about this because I've listened to a lot of them, and I'm a big fan of what you're doing. So
Awesome. Well, that makes me feel good. That makes me feel
I
real
gotta
good.
butter the host up because he's got editing rights.
Yeah. Something like that. Pretty raw. All right, dude. Tell me what childhood was like.
All right, so I am your typical Midwest Kansas kid. I was born in Topeka, Kansas. We grew up in Lawrence, Kansas. How the story is going to go is kind of like this. So my parents were married really young. Let's say I was at the wedding, if you get where I'm going on.
Yeah.
So, and then where my life starts to pivot, it was kind of what I call the Camelot period. And then my mom had my brother and my sister. My mom got sick with a really tough cancer at a really young age. And so she died at 25. I was 7.
Oof.
And so that both of my parents were super uber Christian. We grew up in a very religious household. I was 7. So, part of me is like, yeah, that's kind of young to remember stuff. But when I look at my own children and realize how dependent they were on me at 7, and my brother was 4, my sister was 1 when she passed, it kind of rocked my world. It put mortality in my face at 7. Yeah. It made me really defensive and protective of my brother and sister. And of course, my dad was hurting. My family was hurting. My mom was really special. She was a great artist. She was a great person. In fact, for the longest time too, like every kid's going to idolize his mom. I probably idolized her. She wasn't a person at that point. I wrote her letters for months after she passed. So painful. And to this day, during my drinking years, we got the day that she died tattooed on me because you know what white boys do. But nowadays, for recovery, though, we celebrate her birthday and we have all kinds of things in place where she's a part of our life. And so we'll talk about that later. But so that was pivotal. And I think that was an early pain. And then a side note to that story, because I was telling you if your questions were pretty in depth. I was like, there's like a book here. My grandfather, her dad, was a electrician lineman throughout the Midwest during the 40s and 50s. He actually killed himself because of alcoholism. He had went to institutions before. One of my uncles has nothing good to say about him. My mom wrote a letter before she passed that was a warning to my brother and I and my sister that, hey, Grandpa was a really genuine guy until he drank. And I had that letter. I think I might still have it somewhere. And it's also in her journals that we have. But that was, if you were looking from the cosmic storyline, there's foreshadowing right there. So, but I never really took it seriously. So there's not a lot of memories about that. But I learned about that now as I get older. So that's kind of this little roaring thing going on. So
right, kind of like what built who you are.
Yeah. So that, and now when you look back, so a year after she passes, my dad remarries. And for a long time that was really hurtful. And I've had to work through that. And obviously, I think most people have that. Now with these gray hairs and being 11 years sober, I can actually talk to him and look at stuff. Like I've actually got to the point too where I can display certain angers and confusions and also see him as a parent because there is no handbook. And did he make mistakes? Pretty sure he's admitted it to me. But that was a real weird time. Like here, he's lost a huge chunk of life. He's got 3 kids. My stepmom coming in had gone through a divorce. Now we have 2 other sisters. Now there's this mixed family of 7. So how was my childhood? We grew up in Lawrence, Kansas. It was a wicked time period to grow up in. I grew up in the 80s and the 90s in Lawrence, Kansas, a huge music town, full of art, full of poetry, liberal arts college. I think I was in the right place at the right time because most of the stuff I know and do now, I'm very proud of the things I know. Yeah. But I was also privy to a really interesting lifestyle when the door opened for alcoholism. Trust me, it was very open and free. But growing up, I was a real good kid. Guys, boring. I'm telling you, church. Ran cross country, tried football. Was drug across the touchdown line a couple of times. I wasn't the biggest guy. I was very sociable in school and stuff. I think that's where we were going. Yeah. Made friends pretty easy. So not a big problem. And because of the stuff, growing up at home was tough. So I was trying to think of how to talk to you about this. Yeah. Because I want the listeners to gain from my interview I could get real detailed and tell you about how just shitty shit could be. And I spent years either drunk saying what I went through, and I spent years regurgitating it to family, and I spent years, I'm not going to tell you all those stories, but I will tell you, like, hurtfully one time in my 20s when I was in my drinking, I told my dad, like, growing up in your house was like living, like walking on eggshells. And I meant it, and it hurt him. That's some stuff he had to work out, which I think he has now. And I had to work out. But that's kind of what there was a lot of basically growing up. School was great. Functions were great. I like going to church. What I had was is when I would go home, there was lots of fighting. We had 2 reactive parents, both who were going through emotional things that they never healed from. You had 3 kids, me, my sister, and brother, who just went through a huge tragedy. And then we had my 2 stepsisters who went through this weird divorce. Nobody had sat down and was like, hey, how do you heal as a family? Now they tried. There's a lot of church things involved, but no answers came.
Right. There's a lot of hey, try this, but then no, like it doesn't come to fruition. It doesn't, there's no finality to it. There's no like, hey, we attempted to solve the problem, so therefore we check the box and we move forward, which bakes in that kind of like, okay, we tried and we did this. So now you should be fine. Right. And that gives us the whole, okay, I'll shoulder the burden. I'm good.
Yeah. A lot of it too was, it was very interesting. And I know you've talked about your faith. I have a huge faith, which it will surprise you what kind of level it is. I don't really, maybe it's really hippy dippity, but because I've gotten angry at God and I think he's cool with that, or she. I'm just not a dude. Okay, anyways, but there was a lot of things growing up. Toxic communication was my example. I mean, and I've had that in my relationships. They would not communicate effectively. They would constantly fight. In my house, it was like this. If you and I were going at it, okay, it wasn't always physical. No one got beat. I think my dad punched me once, and so when I spiked my hair with egg whites because I was like, "Oh," but we would get in a family fight. No, it was crazy. Sorry,
I'm laughing at the egg whites, not the fact that you got punched.
Punk rock thing I heard, and he was pissed, and my sister ratted me out. Anyways, but the goal in our family for the longest time was you build it up, which most of us do. This is a common trait with families, and then you barf it out, and then there's no listening, there's no emotional intelligence, and then my goal is to go at you and hurt you, like with my words. And that's what I was
psychologically.
Yes, that was what I was trained. That's what I saw. And so when the adults would do it to me, then I would do it back. I would get good at it. Yeah. Because my stepmom was coming at me with some of the BS that she would. She wasn't mentally healthy, like diagnosed not mentally healthy. It was 12 years of roller coaster emotions growing up. School was an escape. When I started working at 14, that was an escape. I mean, I'm saying the word escape purposely because I think you're going to see where it slides. You know what I mean? So, it was kind of rough. And, I'm really happy where I'm at right now. My wife's family is really awesome. My dad's and I are starting to communicate again. So things have come back, are into where they need to be. And that recovery did that, and therapy has done that. So, but they have good examples. And my mother-in-law, she's a minister who was pivotal. And I'll talk about her later in my recovery when you're finding somebody in that community. But she's like, sometimes you gotta, you realize, just accept, like, you went through some really rough shit.
Yeah.
And we don't let ourselves realize that, So that was, I don't want to get in specifics, but it was rough. A lot of fighting and a lot of like personal attacks, because that's how our family knew how to do it. And I think it really was toxic.
What did that do to your confidence level as you progressed through childhood, school, and what did it do to your relationships as it pertained to like your friend groups and things like that throughout school?
I was always really sociable. So I always met people. People like latched onto me. That's cool. Confidence, though. No. I had a boss once call me a supernova. You know what I mean? You're either in or exploding. And that was me. My confidence, and even today, I have so much confidence now that I give to my recovery and my family. I'm a badass, actually. There you go. You can be sober and still be like, yeah, dude, I'm a badass.
That's right.
But it was so all over the place. Like growing up, I was very insecure. I was always outgoing. Like I will throw stuff out just to be defensive. It's like flack when you're, just throw flack out, say stuff, make people laugh. That was what I would do. So I had this outward confidence always inside. I was the typical grunge kid. I had my journals,
Yeah.
listen to Henry Rollins, lawyer. And that Nine Inch Nails really talked to me, man. Don't tell my dad. Smashing Pumpkins.
Oh yeah.
My poetry was typical stuff, but I also had was really mixed. I had this inner conflict with faith all the time because that was such a big thing. I mean, if you ever have a chance to want to get coffee and you want to connect, I can sit and talk to you about that kind of stuff, to you or to your listeners. Like, I think that's something we need to talk about because we are in the Midwest and faith is a huge issue, but my confidence wasn't really there, to be honest with you. Like I also know it wasn't there because I always would get to the line to do something great and I never finish it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's perfect for if you're an alcoholic. That's like, dude,
that's a whole lifetime of that.
That's all you're going to do with alcohol, so everything I kind of look back, I used to laugh sometime in meetings where people would talk about their past. Like, you could tell I was an alcoholic when I was 4. What? Maybe not that bad. That's exaggerated. But, now look back, I'm like, there were signs that, and I don't, like heredity, I believe this is an illness, personality traits that, or from my environment that were just setting this inevitability up. So that's, without really big specifics, growing up was rough. I had food, I had clothes, I learned a good work ethic, but was I completely happy? No.
Right.
Not at all.
Yeah.
What you got for me?
No, I think it's good to understand where you were at. And I hate to use the word psychologically, but where you were at with your confidence, where you were at with, like, you knew how to traverse conversations, you knew how to engage people, you knew how to, but finishing it was never something that you.
One of the things I would suggest too, because I think the ultimate thing with your podcast is reaching out to people who are struggling with addiction right now.
Yes.
And part of that struggle is going to be, you're going to have to confront your past. And one of the things I wrote down in my notes when I was looking at this, and it kind of hit me last night, I had no confidence, but there were certain markers in my life. And I know there's someone listening right now who's probably went through this too. Like I said, I was very protective of my brothers and sisters.
Mm-hmm.
Humor was part of my way to deflect anger from parents.
Yeah.
To deflect, like if mom and dad were at it, like there was times they would be at it and I would cook dinner. We would have kid meetings where we're like, what the hell is going on? And I'm the oldest. They're all looking to me. Like I remember when I left for college, which I didn't finish, but my stepsister like locked herself in my car because she didn't want me to go because my stepmom was yelling at her own daughter to the point that she would hyperventilate sometimes. And I would step in. Like, no, like leave her be. You know what I mean? There was that survival kind of thing that the humor, like no confidence, whatever, but sometimes it would just click in me. Like, this is what I got to do to get us through. And this is what I got to do. Just, like that's one of the reasons I love music. Like sometimes you could just escape. Like like every TV show has a montage.
Yeah.
I had to have one to go to school. I'm not joking. Or to go to bed. I needed something to escape into, something to keep my brothers and sisters, we can do this.
Yeah.
Even though inside I probably was suffering.
Mm.
You know what I mean? But later on, that little flicker of survival, I think is what helped push me over the edge to get sober.
Yeah. Well, when did you start drinking?
Okay, so this is what's so funny because this, I'm sure you've been in the rooms, people are like, yeah, I was smoking cigarettes and drinking booze when I was in 6th grade. Holy, what was wrong with your family? That wasn't me. No. I didn't actually, I was dating somebody. I met her at a restaurant when I was like 18 and my first love of my life. I don't want to talk about love. I'm glad I have it now, but, and I remember she would go to these parties and it used to make me uncomfortable because here I was like this Christian kid, you know what I mean? And actually I was pretty straight edge, in high school. Like I actually was, emceeing a Christian coffee house. I don't know if anybody's old enough to remember like the 90s when like,
sure,
hard rock Christian stuff like Tooth and Nail Records was coming out. So that's not me. So I wound up like, I don't remember, I got involved with this Christian coffee shop. And, so I was real big into like all kind of ministry stuff. So it was really funny. So when she would drink stuff, like I would get real uncomfortable, you know what I mean? And I was just like, I don't know. I think the first time I started drinking, I had a beer at a party that she had, that they were all going to, and it was kind of fun, you know. But beer tasted like ass, so it wasn't my thing.
Yeah.
I think I left and went and listened to Inema or something like that, walked around the park or whatever. But I was also secretly like, here's where my confidence at. I was so convinced that she was drinking, she was automatically going to sleep with somebody. Like everything was like new to me, right? Overkill, Christian boy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nothing happened. So eventually we wound up living together. But I remember honey brown beer. That's my first real big drunk. I got a 6-pack of honey brown beer from somebody. This is before I was turned 21. And I was at the apartment. I was big into beat poetry. By this point, I had volumes of poetry journal. I used to do poetry readings. I was real big into the beat generation. And so, like, have you read that stuff? I mean, drinking's part of that whole thing.
Right.
All my old poets,
It's ingrained in it.
It's what it is, you know, and it's a freedom. So I was like, I'm going to give this kind of a little another hack, you know, and I actually drank through that 6-pack, and I was like, woo, you know, like it felt good. I felt loopy. I remember she came home and
turned on.
She was like, "What's up with you?" And I was like, "Dude." And kind of then it was like, it wasn't every day, but like it was okay. This is now going to be a part of my life. Like, so that was probably 19, 20. You know, like I was either 19 or 20 years old. That's kind of when I started. So that's kind of late for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So leave it to me. And I just put it in gear. So by 21, so I started working. Have you worked in restaurants?
Yep.
Have you seen the movie Waiting?
Yep. With Ryan Reynolds?
I lived that life. I'm not even
Which
joking.
character were you?
I was one of the guys I was a frontline cook.
Yeah.
My personality was definitely Reynolds.
Yeah.
I definitely probably pulled a goat once or twice to somebody. I mean, there's so many funny stories about that restaurant. I won't say the name of it. It was a corporate change. There was one in Cedar Falls for a little bit until it shut down by Who Hot. But it was a college town, and I got hired. I was working at a steakhouse beforehand and had some great memories there. And anyways, I got hired there, and it was a whole new world. Like, that's why I met so many cool people. And it was part of the culture. Like, legit, like, there's a Chili's next door.
Yeah.
And I was like this really, I had read a lot.
That's a coming of age job.
Dude, it was. I started smoking Camel cigarettes then.
Yeah.
Well, I was doing radio before I really started working there. So I was smoking Lucky Strikes and stuff and Camels because I wanted to be like, I was a big Rat Pack fan. Everything was all retro for me.
Yeah.
My friends used to make fun of me. Like, Matt has like a freaking trunk full of costumes that he wears. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, the restaurant, this is a pivotal moment where things start going crazy, because at my jobs up until then, like from 14 to like 19, 20, I was the pillar. I was the employee you wanted. I showed up early. I was very productive. I was like always the clean, you know, the guy that, you know, I made things happen at these restaurants, and I liked my job. I like people. I like making people happy. I do it today. So I was so good at it. Well, you're that cool little spiky haired punk rock kid. All the little waitresses, and it's, oh, he's so cute. You should come out to the party with us. And then, you know, the bartender's like, hey, I got you guys soda. Wink, wink. And they were full of vodka and Pepsi, you know, and the whole staff's like, yo, man, come on. And it just started sprinkling in.
Yeah.
So by the time I was 21, I mean, we almost destroyed the restaurant at that birthday party. It was people jumping on cars. You know, there's stories. There are stories that are fun. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
I always tell people,
nostalgia.
They are nostalgics to your drinking. For some people,
they're called. It's there's a term for it. It's called euphoric recall.
So I will tell people, not all my drinking experiences are bad, but technically they kind of led to being bad.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like in the early days, I had some real memory. I mean, we would go and stare at the moon, watch stars, write poetry. You know what I mean? Drink wine. But that didn't last. It didn't take long for warning signs to pop up. So, but yeah, so that's when I would say about 2021. As soon as I turned 21, the brain was like on, and it became like all the things I could, like I was still having huge issues with my family, religious issues with them, future issues with them, and then my dad was going through his stuff with my stepmom at the time. The breakup was starting to happen. My brothers and sisters, so it started becoming a mess. You know, and I could have, you know, so when we get to the regret question, we'll go there. But so that was, I think for me, that's when it really started. Between like 19 and 21, that's when the bottom started. They just opened up and like, this is going to become your thing. And that legit became for years then what people knew about me was my drinking.
Yeah.
Stories, horror stories, legends and tales, or you peed in my closet, asshole. So,
Yeah. No,
so that's what became my legacy for a long time.
Those are, I think every alcoholic has this, these fables about themselves, right? When they were drinking, and the stories become bigger and bigger and bigger and more robust, and it's like
that's a trigger, I think, actually.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I really do, Matt. That's one of those things, because I almost have to stay away from that today.
I agree.
Because if I start thinking about that, it's like, it was kind of fun.
No,
you know what I mean? Like,
totally.
and you really have to say, yeah, but that didn't end well.
Didn't end well.
Never ended well.
One of the things I'll talk to, so if you're young, and I think Nick's hitting it on the head, be very careful right now. If anybody's in early sobriety, and if you're in 20 some years of sobriety, maybe be careful. Like, I be careful too. Lucky my wife is really awesome. She'll like sometimes be like, because she lived through some of this.
Yeah.
I used to be a writer. Now I got dad stuff. I used to paint. You know what I mean? Ingrained in my head is this countercultural. I praise the counterculture. I love all this stuff like that. I've been able to put that where it needs to be and take the healthy aspects. Like, some of my favorite artists and stuff were actually sober. You guys know David Bowie helped Trent Reznor get sober. So anyways, but I still do have to be careful. There were great times. I could write a book. In fact, I wanted to for a long time. It's like, life is better in Kansas when you're not sober. And I had people like, dude, you should totally write this story. I'm not. Yeah. Because I think it'd be in the wrong hands. It would encourage. And my story has changed. And I'm proud of that. Like, like I said, I'm a badass now. I'm sober.
Yeah.
That transformation.
That is badass.
Yeah.
Like that, being able to say that and live that and know it as a fact, that's the blood, sweat, and tears that you had to put into that. I would equate. I've never won a state title in wrestling in Iowa, but I would equate it to some of the hardest work you'll ever do in your life, not only physically but emotionally.
If you're listening to this and you heard how him and I both did that should give you chills, because that's two grown men telling you how hard and an accomplishment. You just said, like, winning a state champ. I give it to the point of you're doing CPR and the person doing it too is alive now. That's how important it is.
Yes.
They just spit the water out, and now the montage happens like they're alive. That's, for me, that's the moment.
Yeah.
So much so that I'm sober now. Like, this is what I want. I always tell this story to people I talk to when they get sober. I don't know if you guys are in, there's all kinds of parables, but one of the things I say when it comes to getting sober, and you're talking about that accomplishment, is there's a Hindu parable where there's a blind man and he's on a donkey, and he's going through this like town, and he's like, "Where's my donkey? He's on the donkey, but he's like, "Where's my donkey?" And everybody's looking at him. They're like, "You're on the donkey." And so when it's so simple as right there. So when he finally figures it out, it's like, boom. So it's such an accomplishment. Like,
it is.
But be careful with the nostalgia stuff. We'll talk about it, I think, in some questions coming up. When you're doing that, make sure you're at a certain point, and you better have a community around you. Yeah.
So this is so just to touch on that, because the nostalgia stuff for me, and I shared this one time. I don't know if it was on Facebook or to a group of people, but when I got to a year of sobriety, it was like the day before I was going to be a year sober. Mm-hmm. And I was on a work trip. I was alone. I had traveled out to Denver, Colorado, and I had just gotten my rental car, and I was driving into Lodo, right? Like Lower Denver. Yeah, and I was like, man, there's a lot of the freeway is just packed full. Right. And I'm like, it's the playoffs and the Nuggets are playing. Duh. But then I look over at the Rockies field, which is right to my right, and all the lights on, and it's like, ooh, there's a Rockies game. That would be fun,
of course,
to go. And just those little euphoric things are like, and have a beer, right? Like,
exactly.
But then I look to my left, and my window is down. It's nice weather, mountain air, right? Don't get to be over there very often. I'm from Iowa, and I'm in Denver, Colorado, and I'm like,
no nitrates.
But when I do that, I realize that there's a minivan sitting next to me, and the windows are all down, and there's just a bunch of kids packed in. And when I say kids, I mean 20 somethings.
They're
You know what I
kids
mean?
to us. It's okay.
Kids to me. I'm
Call
40
them
years old at
kids.
this
You're
point. Right?
kids.
Like, and I can just smell the weed, and I can see that they've got drinks in their hand, and I'm like, that's an Uber, and they're going out.
Yeah.
And they see me, like I'm looking at them, kind of staring, you know, with like kind of stars in my eyes, like you have no idea what like you're gonna get into tonight. You don't even care. And I'm just like going back to that point, and I was just like, they look over and they're like, "Hey man," and I was like, "What's up?" They're like, "Where you going? You going to the game?" And I was like, "Which one?" And they were like, "To the Nuggets." And I was like, "Oh yeah, the Nuggets are in. It's the playoffs." And they're like, I was like, "No." They're like, "Oh, you must be going to the Rockies game." I was like, "No." They're like, "You going to Drake tonight?" And I was like,
"Oh, what?
Drake's in town too?" And then like traffic starts to move forward, and they take off and they go about their night. And I'm just like, I remember being one of those kids in that car, drink in hand, you know, doing whatever.
I probably fell out of the car and grabbed you.
Yeah.
That was me.
Yeah, like it was just like,
buddy, we're going to the quad.
All of the nostalgia and euphoric recall that rushed back into myself at that point in time was like, it was like a magical feeling, but you kind of snap out of it and you're like, no, go to the hotel room, get your dinner. That's what you're looking forward to.
I had a moment like that. Not as crazy as that, but when we get to the point where I hit my bottom stuff, but there was this moment around that time I hit my bottom, and my wife was doing Al-Anon, and she was pregnant with my son. And, we were in Hopkins, Minnesota, and it's a bar town. I had already been drinking there for months, telling my wife, legit say I'm going to a meeting, and I would go to the bar. What a dick, and I'm not stupid. She knew. But I had a moment like that where it's like, I mean, I'm like a Ryan Adams song, like "Oh Whiskey Town," like, I mean, like a good old bar or whatever. Like it could be a song would trigger me for a while. And so I remember there was a moment, and I was like in the little snowy walk. I mean, my car at that point, I couldn't drive it, you know what I mean? And I was legit like at this like L-shaped crossroad, and I could smell, like, this is messed up. From blocks away, I could smell beer and cigarettes in the wind. And it was like 2 blocks one way. And there was like 8 to 12 effing blocks straight in the wind to this little railroad depot where they had the meetings. And I'm like, like you get this thought in your head, like, well, I've already thrown my life away anyway. Not my wife, my life away anyways. I might as well just go get, they'll take me back. Everybody does. Like, I mean, I was at this crossroads. I mean, it's so funny. Like you were sitting there, in the car, and here comes that camel. I'm smelling the smoke, and because what we'll talk about later, I was able to turn right and walk straight in that freezing wind and sit through a crazy meeting. And actually, that's a meeting where I learned the phrase, "Stop counting days, make days count." Yeah. So I'm glad I went. I'm a huge believer that if you go to a certain meeting, even if it's a shitty meeting, whatever was on your mind will somehow miraculously get addressed.
Yeah.
And so that was cool. But yeah, triggers. Oh man, I'm at like 11 years sober, and it's still like I take it one day at a time.
That's awesome.
I don't have the triggers like I had before. In fact, I remember like you're 2 years into, I think it was 3 years or so into it. One morning, I had gotten up and put my feet on the floor, hands on my knees, and I started chuckling. My wife was like, that's kind of creepy. Like, what do you? And I was like, I legit just had a dream.
Why are you being weird?
Yeah, right. Because we have kids now. I don't sleep. But I was laughing and chuckling. I go, I legit just woke up from a dream, and I can smell Camel cigarettes and PBR, and I'm just laughing. And she's like, okay. But for me, I was laughing like, not interested.
Yeah.
But that's a legit like sensory factor that can play into that kind of stuff.
Dude, dreams. Do you still have dreams about?
Not anymore. I dream about, I'm so boring, fishing and work.
Yeah. I will still, once in a blue moon, have a dream where like I can't move, and I know I'm like messed up in the dream. Mm-hmm. And then like all of the anxiety and regret.
Oh yeah.
Like starts to like, and I'm like, oh no. And then I'll wake up and it's like,
no, yeah. So I guess you're right. I have had off and on, about maybe once a year, I'll have like this really weird dream, and it's the worst dream Because if you're an alcoholic right now, I know you know what I'm talking about, and you're going to know Nick too. The amount of anxiety you have to hide your drinking, okay? The amount of it's just constant. Like there were times in my life where I had to piece together receipts in New York City because I lived in New York City for a while to find out where the fuck I went that night.
Yeah. Oh, I've been there.
Why was I on the Upper West Side? I never go on the Upper West Side. I spent $80. What, and so in my dreamscapes, I'll have this frightening dream, and it's people that I love, and it's either they're confronting, it's like, another intervention, or I'm totally back in that situation where I'm waking up and I don't know, like, like I feel uncomfortable because you were lying. That whole panic that you have when you're an alcoholic of trying to hide it,
that you live with every single day.
It's torture. And I am so happy. 11 years, I've been free of that. Well, the first year sucks. You have a lot to go through. But about second, third year, and when you start handling situations, I haven't felt more free. So when it comes up in a dream, it sucks.
Yeah.
And generally what I do when I have those dreams, I actually hit a big book. I call my sponsor up and I'm just, hey, I had that stupid dream again. Or, like I go help somebody.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. What were you like when you drink or use?
It depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
So there's different stages. So as mentioned earlier in the beginning, it was kind of fun. You know what I mean? It was like what young people do.
Yep.
You party. And in my mind, it was artistic and poetic. And I want to be Jack Kerouac and William S. Burroughs. And I want to be Allen Ginsberg. And I want to be Iggy Pop. We're just doing crazy stuff. You know what I mean? And some of those were really cool experiences. Not for everybody. I remember my friend Josh, I love you, said early on, like we're like 2021, he's like, you don't handle it too well sometimes.
Mm.
And then I would, that was the thing. If you were going to hang out with me, we would generally go drink. So there's some people and friends, like my older friends from high school and stuff like that, like, dude, every time we come hang out, we always wind up at the bar or drinking somewhere. It's kind of old. Yeah, you're the old Christian friends, whatever. And then all my restaurant friends, well, whatever, let's go get some more. And then you stop. These guys fell away. I stopped making real new friends. And literally that became. So, I know for a fact I've lost friends. I was a blackout drunk.
Yep.
Before cell phones, I would call my best friend, Chuck, and find out what I did the night before. Embarrassing.
Yeah. Yeah. Regret is a really.
So glad I didn't live in the age of cell phones.
Oh.
There's the ATM warrior story where I was so wasted from the bar that the ATM took my card, and they had one of those glass little atriums, and I was drop kicking the ATM. I'm sure it had a camera. And then my friends were driving down the main street, and there's this crowd gathered, and there's this crazy young kid drop kicking an ATM, and they're like, "Oh, it's Matty G."
Mm.
And they pulled me out. Then I tried to start a fight. And is that a funny story in some level? Yes. My friends they like the ATM warrior. It's come up before.
Yeah. And
I'm not proud of that moment.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the crap you got to deal with sometimes because even now today, 20 years later, you're like, man, did you really have to say that?
Sorry, kids. That's not too bad of a nugget I let out. So
yeah. So tell me, ATM Warriors 1, tell me about another time when you were just like really the most messed up.
So I was actually thinking about, so basically though, how I was when I was drunk, there could be good times. I was one of those people that I would reach for experience. I'd also get real emotional. And in my early alcoholism, I would black out and sometimes talk about my mom. And people were like, dude, that was frightening. You went to some other place. So there was a lot packed into there. And then sometimes completely out of control stuff, like tackling people on stages at a concert, like running up during someone's show. But one of the worst was before I got to New York. And in New York City, I got in New York about 2003-ish or so. And eventually I met my wife, or soon-to-be wife, in 2007 and put her through some hell. So things were getting bad then. But I would say one of the worst places was before I moved to New York City. I'd gotten to the point that everything about me was about drinking. I had lost lots of money. I was in debt. I was, calling out sick. So I was no longer the awesome employee. I was kind of a pain in the ass people. I had an attitude. And so, I could have froze to death. I think the lowest I was at one point was I was at a punk rock show. I was at work at the restaurant, and this amazing Midwest punk band. I'm not going to talk about you guys. One of my buddies used to play in it. I went on to some other band, and it was like this special reunion he was going to play for me. So we went down to this awesome pinball bar, and I was double fisting PBRs. And when I say double fisting, I had 2 here and 2 here. So I had 4 beers. Middle of the winter, we're at the show, and some dude bumps me. I'm like, beep, beep, beep. Blah, 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 blah. And he breaks his glass on my eyebrow. And I'm like drunk. I mean, I was drunk before I got there, bleeding out my eye.
Oh no.
Nothing like, probably because I was just wasted. I mean, I don't have a big scar or whatever. So I go sit at the bar, and my rockabilly buddy is like, dude, man, you gotta be careful, like what's going on. And then these dudes come up like, hey, I was like, what, exchange some words. And I'm like, would you guys like do shots? Like, this is some gutter punk stupid stuff.
Yeah.
So we start doing shots. I wind up, I don't know how long later, we wind up at some weird, I don't know, someplace. And I was leaning up against the back of the garage, and it's freezing cold. And the next thing you know, I wake up and I'm on at the bottom of a snow-covered hill. I just woke up, and I was like massively cold. And then next thing I know, I wake up the next day in my closet with like bruises and all kinds of stuff. Basically, what we figured out, because thank you for my roommate at the time, is like I had walked clear across town. I think I stopped at one of my friend's house and pissed him off. Get out, man. Tried to walk up this hill by my apartment, rolled down the hill, and like was out in the snow for a couple hours. And my wife always says she thinks my mom was my guardian angel. So anyways.
Were you married at that time?
No.
Okay.
So, oh no. I was not the most, I probably dated, like, they weren't really dates, if you know what I mean. Like relationships, but that wasn't the first time during that time period I woke up in my closet. So I think I tell that story to some people sometimes, because I'm like, dude, that's how scary it could have been. Because I've had friends that had done that, and have gotten frostbite or been majorly hospitalized. So I could have been in big trouble.
Yeah.
So did it stop me? No, I kept rolling the dice. A lot of the stupid stuff I did, I kept rolling the dice. So that was a real low point. And kind of around then is when I started like, I need something different. And then I had a friend, she was living in New York, and she's like, you need to come to New York and do something different. Obviously, like, it's great. You'll be a writer and everybody loves it up here. I was like, I got all this debt. And she goes, you can pay it when you get up here. So I sold everything I owned, basically. I was living with my grandma at that point because I was so wasted most of the time that I kind of screwed up this apartment situation, and I wanted to go back home. So I wound up taking a Greyhound bus to Manhattan, came in Port Authority, and then a whole nother messy chapter of my alcoholism came out. So what's the next question?
Tell me about a moment you look back on with the most regret.
Right there, that moment.
Yeah. Kind of meet you right there.
Okay, so my grandmother on my dad's side, I kind of mentioned, that when it came to having good parts growing up, that was her. She had a great faith, no matter what was going on. She loved people, and she really took care of us. I always called her mom. I call my grandma's mom. I even call my mother-in-law mom. Because I don't have one, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? When I was staying with her, I put on a good act. I worked. She's always like, he worked so hard. She wasn't stupid. But I did take care. I mean, helped her out a lot, helped her garden and stuff like that. So I wasn't like the worst grandson. I wasn't taking money from her. I always had my money. But I was lost, and she could see that. She was so sweet. She'd say things like, he just wants to write his poetry and live a life out. But my dad never was like, you need to go to school. You need to do this stuff. I did not know where he was at, and the alcohol wasn't helping him. So then I just jump on this chance to go to New York City, which didn't turn out too bad because it led to where I'm at now. But what I regret the most is that the person that cared the most about me during that time period, I left her, which she wanted. She's like, you should go. And I called her like every day. I call my other grandma too, like every other day. Like, this is important to me. But I'm telling you folks, one of the things to think about is I'm not going to get those conversations back. I'm not going to be able to garnish the wisdom I should have gotten. And when you get sober, you learn about the love you got to give other people. So I was given love, and as alcoholics, we just absorb that. Okay. I could have had that
Maliciously
opportunity.
almost.
Oh yeah. It's greedy. We're like the Wall Street assholes of emotions.
Right.
There's no reason we need all that love because we don't give a thing back. It's so selfish. So what do I regret the most? I regret not being able to love her like I should have.
Yeah.
I regret that I, I, good friends. I regret a few good friends that won't talk to me anymore. But that's part of this process. I mean, and I get emotional right now about it because it is a regret. But guys, when you get to where I'm at, or some of these older sober guys get, like, you're going to learn how to handle this. So yes, this is a temporary emotion, and it's okay. I'm human. She's gone now. When she died, though she was dying, I was talking to her, but the day she died, but she told her brother and her and like, I love that Matt. He really does love his kids. Like, that was the biggest compliment I ever got, because dude, if I was drunk, there's no way. So
Right.
my biggest regret is the people that I hurt along the way. And that's why I had to work so hard, and sometimes still do, when I meet strangers.
Yeah, I think you touched on something there. The people that you hurt along the way, even the ones who you don't think about much anymore, that really you might have had a severe impact on, right? And even more than that, the people who loved you for a long time, and I'm not talking about relatives, I'm talking about friends, because I burnt a lot of bridges, and really, and I've attempted to try to rebuild, but some of them,
I've had people post on Facebook like, "Don't come back to this town, loser."
Yeah, I've had like, just been blocked on Facebook. You know what I'm saying? Like that. And that's, I don't know, dude, I played the victim card so damn hard in my life.
It's our MO.
And I was, you were coming at me. It was your fault. I played that card better than anybody else, that I could twist it and make it on you. So when you talk to me about how you would psychologically have to have psychological warfare as a child, I carried that same stuff into my adult life and played it against some of the people who were my riders, my A1 day ones. And the actions that I've taken in my life, I really there's a lot of stuff that I regret, but it all had to happen for me to get to where I'm at now.
Oh yeah.
And I'm at peace with where all that stuff is at, but I still there's that I would be lying if I say I didn't regret playing the victim card or making it seem like it was their fault that those relationships got burned. Yeah.
When you realize that victim card stuff, because this is something I had to come to grips to, because I would do the poor me, which, by the way, if you say poor me another, but when you realize sometimes when you're playing that victim card, what will really shock you sometimes is you'll say yes, there are emotional and relationship things connected to that, but look with a magnifying glass and see how much that's related so that you could live the lifestyle to get drunk.
Right.
That's what's scary.
Yeah.
Like, you're like looking back, I'm like, dude, not only was I just a dick to that person, but I was, for the sole purpose that I come up with that drama so that I could get the next drink.
Exactly. And that is the way in which alcohol or drugs or whatever it is will lie to you and steal from you. It'll steal people right out of your life. And it's done. And it does it to you. So you do it for them.
Oh yeah.
You are acting for the most toxic relationship that you've got in your life. Alcohol is your best friend, but it's the worst friend you'll ever have in your entire life.
It's so funny too. It's like the whole world burning it on fire. Right. But why would
God forbid you let go of that.
Why would I change this tumbler full of whiskey, bro?
Right.
It's because you're a dick.
Exactly.
Dude, no. It's pretty sad. It's pretty. Got shivers because, just the way you said it perfectly. So if you're listening to Nick right there, play that back. If you're wondering about getting sober and why people think you're an asshole, it's because you're addicted to something.
It's not you.
Yeah, you're addicted to something that doesn't want to change. It's like it's in you. And so you're creating this so you can pick up that next drink. If you could get to accepting that, I'm telling you, folks, you just got a key to a Ferrari.
Yeah.
You're going to boom. You're getting close to the door, baby.
Right.
That's exciting. I like the way you described that, because just sitting here getting chills. He said it. It's ringing bells in my ears.
Yeah. Well, it resonates because it's real, man.
Yeah.
Like that's a real thing.
And you can tell he's done some work because that's the only way you're going to be able to pick that up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because shame will, if you're ashamed of something, you can't talk about it.
Oh, yeah, no.
Until you do the work and forgive yourself for it. Right. Then you can start doing the work on it. And that's something that I hope that anybody listening would take away from that too. Start doing the work on that stuff, because as soon as you can move shame to guilt, you can apologize for guilt.
Yeah.
You can go somewhere, you can take guilt somewhere.
Right.
But if it's sitting in your shame bucket, you can't get rid of that until you start working it. You got to do the work to do that. And you got to admit it within yourself that you did something wrong.
Of course.
So
I love it.
Okay. So this next one is I don't know if we're going,
I'm messing Nick up. I'm rambling on.
Yeah, no, well, I think it's all good rambling though. Like, there's lessons in here.
I'm an Irish guy. I try to make notes. So
there's little golden nuggets in these conversation, man. You got to take what you can get when you can get it.
Right
so
on,
tell me when you started to notice that you were different. For me, and I'll just give you an example. I think I had trauma from like way back when, and like similar to what you described, like something happened to me at a very young age that I buried, and I thought I was, like it was what it was, but alcohol allowed me to kind of escape that. So like I would drink and all the bullshit would go away, and then I would be able to like mask it. But then I started, like, at some point it went from like weekend benders to excessive nightcaps to really drinking to cope with everything. Right. So, and I think at some point you realize that you're geared a little bit differently, but you may not be on the like, I'm ready to make a change yet.
Right.
You know what I mean? So when did that happen for you? When did you realize that you were different?
I kind of realized when I was in Kansas. So I have my childhood, my high school, not so shabby. Boom, in the 20s, we started as a rock and roll. Then there's the New York. And then after the New York City here, we're going to go right there and back into that mid 20s area. It didn't take long for all or nothing Matt to start realizing stuff. So I would say by 25, so remember I started drinking at 19, 20. By 25, I was actually actively trying to think in my head of ways to make alcohol work for me. You know what I mean? Like how to cope with work, make sure I don't call it sick. Try the beer, not the liquor. None of this stuff worked. Like maybe not go on parties. I mean, that's a sign, man. Like if you're trying to navigate your drinking to make other people, things acceptable. Okay. And then too, man, like if you're trying to get change together to buy a 12-pack of PBR, like, dude, it used to be like $5 in quarters. Okay. Like, I'm seriously, dudes, like, come on. Like, some of that's funny because that's college shit. You're like, yeah, man, some of it's like, dude, you really needed beer that bad that you went through your couch cushions and your friends' cars. You and you guys are like,
yeah,
$1 picture night, man. We got to get the change together because we had no money. You know why? Because we drank our money away.
Yeah.
But back, like I'd say mid 20s is when I started noticing I was, there's something going on. And my brother was drinking. He's a little bit younger than me, but he started kind of drinking. But yeah, and I had a couple old friends who were like, hey, it should be a little easy there. My best friend's mom, sometimes you guys are a little too crazy.
Yeah.
So that's when it started. And when you're showing up at parties and eventually when you're 28, 26 or something like that. And
I'm with you.
You're the older dude. Stupid. Why are we here right now? I was at high school parties, but I would say a pivotal point for anybody, if you're listening, if you're actually not, like, I have a friend, this dude's like Thor. He's like an engineer. I think he's done every drug under the sun. He's got the most amazing family. I'm sure he's got some personal issues here and there. No one does it. And he could drink and do blow and stuff and then go and pass, like he's one of these guys, he's Nordic. That's his thing. He's never had.
He's genetically different.
Right. Like this dude could party and be a legend. And I was like, yeah, damn it, dude. And he really loved me, man. Like I used to blow his mind when I talk philosophy. I like make people's brains melt. I'd be so drunk. I'd be at a party and be giving fake lectures to like the yard. People come out and like, what? I'm like, and so Kierkegaard was talking about this. But I was different because he wouldn't black out. I would, like he's not. So yeah, if you're changing, like that's a huge thing. If you're legit at this point, Googling or looking to to monitor how you drink to make things better, I think you need to start maybe keep a journal.
Right.
of what's happening when you're with each one, because you're probably going to start noticing, I started at 3 and I did beer only. Okay. I woke up and somebody, yeah, guys, that's a huge thing. And they'll tell you that in meetings and stuff like too. Like, if you're telling yourself I need to switch something up just to stay normal, it's not normal.
Right.
Not at all. So
Right.
that happened, I would say mid-20s.
Yeah. And not long after that, I think what will happen is you'll start seeing the effects of it physically.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how long it took.
Barfing. Like
Yeah.
you mentioned that one show, the acid, was it the acid reflux?
Oh, heartburn.
Oh my
Dude,
God.
I was dealing with that for years and I was like, this is so
I
bad.
would still drink after I puked it up.
Me too.
Like I would go out between dumpsters.
Like, dang, I wasted it.
Oh, dude. So mad. You know what I mean? Like I'd be sitting there chilling, hanging with the crew. Tonight's going to be a good night. Tonight, nothing stupid is going to happen. And then just mad pain. And I'm in my 20s and I'm feeling pain that like old people get. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
On top of that, too, I was probably hungover and redoing it. So you're just not the smartest person in the world. And then I'd be like, oh, and then go barf in between the dumpsters. And then like, oh, here's how smart I am. Let's go back and keep drinking that whiskey and Coke or that Maker's Mark, on the rocks. That's what's doing it, man. Like, come on.
Dude.
Shakes, like I didn't really get the shakes till later. You want to talk about regrets. We'll talk about this a little bit, but like just hangovers. Like, you know how much time, like they say you sleep so much period of your life. Well, if you're an alcoholic and you have hangovers, you're going to add a lot more to that time where you're in bed doing nothing. And that's a regret, So, but yeah, pain, it's not good.
So, So this kind of takes us into the next thing, right? Like the mess and actually living in the pit and like with all the shit everywhere. And,
it's
and it's just like, it's all messy. Your whole, you start going back and you're like, there's a mess over there. There's a mess over there. I can't even start to fathom where you can start cleaning this up.
We can. That's
what
it's so
I'm gonna have a drink.
Sad.
I'm gonna have a drink, and I'm gonna leave this shit in the past, or this crap in the past, and I'm gonna go. You know what I mean? I'm gonna go start over.
You know what's been the biggest retribution for me? Like it's like God's like, hey, this is what you need to remember. Is I've always been a manager at most places I've been at.
Yeah.
And so like it happened when I was drunk and managing stuff, but now that I'm, like people, I will hire people that have problems. And it's like so funny because now it's like, yep, that's you used to do, man. Here's a friendly reminder of how unorganized and how uncool you were when you were doing it.
Yeah.
So it'll come back to you twice. You'll learn.
Yeah. So the next part of this is like, what obstacles did addiction create in your life? And there's a bunch of things that I wrote down there.
I'm going to tell you from being the person I am today, being sober. And I hope at the end of this podcast with you and I that we can just start touching on amazing things, because I have no problem if someone listens to this and wants to talk to me about all the crazy bad shit. I will tell you I will show you scars. Not a problem. That's between you and me. But I'm hoping that we can eventually say this badass feeling that I have right now. You're like, woohoo. I'm hoping you get it. You know what I mean? Like, dude, it's the best thing ever. And that sounded so cheesy. Edit that crap out. So, but what did it do? I look back from my mid-20s until I got sober, like in my mid-30s. I lost, man. I lost big. I had no depth. I had no confidence. I didn't know how to manage money. I didn't know how to handle relationships. I talked horrible to the people I love the most. I'm lucky those people, some of them stood by me. I missed out. Like, folks, you miss out. Like, you don't realize this disease it takes your life. So I will say like a decade I lost. I hope, here, I'll say it. I lost like a decade. Silence for a reason. Things, I mean, and for the friends and family are still with me, that doesn't diminish all the things we did. I'm just saying the potential of amazingness that you have being alive, you screw up but with this illness, So that's promotions gone.
Yep.
I mean, like, dude,
friendships,
lots of friendships, weird living situations. I'm lucky my health is where it's at, but like, I've had friends that have had some severe health. I didn't kill myself, so that's good. I mean, my depression was rampant.
Yeah.
Second, can't tell you enough the torture that the alcoholic faces. And I know if you're listening now and you're alcoholic, you're going to try to ignore it, but it's torture, guys. You're hiding something that everybody sees. It's disgusting and it's killing you. And it's just anxiety at its most.
Yeah.
It is like this constant tornado. And for some people live their whole lives like that.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is that the people who love you see it.
Oh yeah.
And they are praying
Yeah.
that you get to a point where you see it too.
Dude, it's the donkey thing, man. Like, all the answers, you've been sitting on the answer the whole time. Where's my donkey? And everyone's like, oh my God, dude, like you're sitting on the donkey.
I have all these problems in my life.
Right.
Why can't I get away from all these problems? Why is my relationship struggling? Why are my kids mad at me? Why is my work? Why did I get fired?
Right.
Like, why didn't I get the job? Why didn't they look at me the way that I know that I am?
And then it's like, it's just sitting right there in you. It's like you're wearing the shirt. It's like a scarlet letter of alcohol. It's right there. They all see it. And then like we talked earlier, you play that victim card because you're trying to circle back to this one thing. So that's what in the pit, that's what I lost.
Yeah.
I lost time too, to do things, like youth is wasted on the youth. Yeah, man, if you're an alcoholic, it's definitely wasted on the youth. You think, yeah, there's some great things you can have fun at going to, if you can handle it. But like I was an alcoholic. It's just gone. These things are gone. Now I'm not going to cry over that stuff anymore. Like I got a life to live. And that's where we're going to go in the next stuff. But the gravity of it, and this is what, and I get, if there's someone who's drunk right now who's listening, they're just going to tell me to piss off. Like, hey, wanker's going to tell me a story. Like, oh, you're losing your life. I'm like, fine, dude. You know what I'm going to tell you? Go pick up another bottle and call me and tell me where you got in 4 hours. You know what I mean? And I've told that to people. I've had close friends who got sober after me. Yeah, right now I'm drinking this bottle. I'm thinking about getting another one. I was like, all right, dude, go get one. He's like, what? You're not going to stop me? I'm like, yeah, smartass, go get one. Go get that $4 bottle of Evan Williams. Go drink it, and then call me if you call me, and see how that went for you. Because I know you, and I used to do that with you, and I guarantee you, it's not going to work. Oh, you sound so smug about it. Yeah, because I've been sitting in the rooms, man.
Yeah.
Someone told me that just the other day. Are you pretty smart? Yeah, I've had people in the rooms tell me to shut the up. Sometimes you need that, man.
Yeah, no, you do.
Yeah, and it changed my life. So.
Yeah. You kind of touched on depression and how it was running rampant in your life.
Yeah.
You want to unpack that at all?
Yeah, like, and this is for everybody, man. Like, life isn't, boom, you're awake, you're aware, you have consciousness. Like, shit happens. It's like, it's not bed of roses. Everybody goes through stuff, and it gets depressing. And you young kids right now, I'm very sorry. Life is depressing, and it's hard. It's hard because it's something we don't. I was taught, if I was depressed, I think my dad once asked me if I was on drugs. I was like, what? That's not what I want. No, I'm not feeling well. Are you doing drugs right now? No, I don't know what's going on.
Sad.
You know what I mean? So I grew up in a time period. It wasn't really something you just talked about. It's gotten more, my family too. I always resisted taking like any kind of medication for it.
Yeah.
I'm not taking some mental pill. I'm not going to, I'm going to hate therapists. Who was I?
Right.
You know what I mean? So depression, I think, can happen. And like, dudes, it's okay. Like a lot of people can get depressed. You can just get depressed. We're emotional beings, and it's something we need to talk about. Sometimes you're having a bad day. When you get in the throes of alcohol, though, like it's a depressant.
Dude, mental health problems are a symptom of alcoholism.
Oh, yeah. It falls right. It just comes right out with it. It's like the stuffing inside the bear.
Yeah.
It's in there.
Yeah.
Alcoholic Build-A-Bear. Stuffed with depression, anxiety, and
yeah. No, that's
we should make that. There you go. There's a new product. Build your alcoholic Build-A-Bear. But then what happens?
That's a scary bear, man.
That's a ugly ass bear.
It's a really bad bear.
But yeah, so depression for me, it was a part of it. It was my and I didn't know how to address it. Even when I had some people, like for instance, my wife now, she's always been amazing. Was one of the first ones to really push like therapy stuff. And as we talk about recovery stuff, I want to really press upon some of that stuff. And as a man right now, or a female, I don't care, but as an adult, I'm going to tell people right now, it's just hand in hand with the alcoholism.
Yeah.
Okay. The alcoholism just gets, it's like it just seeps right into every crack and crevice. So what already existed and was painful is now going to be amplified. And then it's going to trick you to think there's some kind of answer and absolution in that drinking. It becomes this big, like you said, a pit. And it gets so mixed up that now you don't know what's going on. And so, guys, like like it's all hand in hand. You need to do a lot of work, but trust me, it's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And you don't have to do it alone. I think that's another thing that you got to,
and maybe something too. I'm kind of tired of depression being completely this subjective idea.
mm-hmm.
Oh, they're depressed. He has the depression. Dude, it's real and it's affecting, like it affects people. Some people get physical effects, but your mental health is a real thing. How you perform, how you talk, how you do things. Like we need to treat it like you have said. Like I like that. My favorite shirt that you got, the one I bought, like, seeking strength, seeking help is strength.
Mm-hmm.
That's so key. You know what I mean? Because if your arm got chopped off, and that's so extreme, you're going to grab that artery, you're going to pinch it, and you're going to try to get not die.
Dude,
like if you have cancer, you're going to go get chemo.
Well, that's just it. Exactly. So I say this to people all the time.
Right.
When they're like, wow, man, I feel like I'm having some issues. And I'm like, okay, think of this. You just got diagnosed with cancer. You've got 6 months to live unless you go and get chemotherapy. If you take chemotherapy, you will there's a very high probability and almost absolution that you are going to live a full recovered life.
Yep.
Flip the script, right? I'm an alcoholic, not cancer. Yep. I'm an alcoholic. And you're not going to live much longer.
No.
And the only way for you to live a long, fulfilling life, what you're supposed to live better than what you're living and have ever lived, is if you stop drinking right now today. You have to stop today. Otherwise you will die shortly.
Yep.
What is your answer?
That's why, I say that to people all the time. And they look at you like, what?
But you have to admit it. You got to admit it and you got to do the work.
Yep.
You got to admit it to yourself. At the very least, you got to admit it to yourself and start doing the work.
If more people could get that sunk into them, you know what I mean? It just, and it's not easy. I think people probably try to tell me that. But what I want to encourage people to, living yes, scientifically, if you are breathing and eating and pooping and whatever, you could be a vegetable and you could be considered living. Let's tell you honest. Like you said, if you don't stop today, if you don't accept that today, you're dying. Like I'm telling people, folks, like when he asked me earlier, like that decade of time, it wasn't a complete waste. I'm not going to devalue the people I spent time with.
But you lost.
But I lost. I lost time. I lost health. I lost potential. I lost spirituality. I was sick. I wasn't living, was I? No. If I was living,
not the way that God intended you to live.
If I was living, I was living. I had what do they call those? A parasite. I was living with this parasite in me. It was taking all my time and energy and money. So that's not living. You know what I mean? Not at all. Not at all. So listen to him again when he says that. Like it's for some people it is a death sentence right off the bat, but for some of us it's grueling, and it's a terminal illness. So that's why you work on one day at a time. 1 minute at a time. I don't care how you do it. And it's doable.
You can't stay clean on yesterday's shower.
I like that one. I saw that here. And I was, I keep running into the mic. I love that. I love that quote. That was pretty cool. Or like, you know what? Like I sometimes tell people too, like, like again, what I said earlier, stop counting days, make days count. That worked for me because of the whole poetic thing. Like, oh yes, make the days count. So I do crazy shit. Like, dude, I love having fun in life.
Yeah.
That's my thing. If you're going to I tell my employees, if you're 8 hours at work, why do we waste 8 hours a day just making do what the boss says? I mean, we do crazy, stupid stuff, man. Like this is like, you got to live. You have some fun.
Yeah. So, all right. The big step forward, man.
Woo!
Tell me about starting your journey into sobriety.
Okay. So I'm going to tell you some stuff. So I get to New York City and I was an alcoholic. Like, there's lots of stories around that. Good stories, bad stories, more bad stories. I met this amazing woman in my life who's now my wife. and I'm so blessed. I had tried once or twice in Kansas to go to a couple meetings. Didn't stick. I've tried, come with me to church. Thanks, Dad. Let's listen to Rich Mullins. Take it. For me, that didn't work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Get to New York. And a lot of times too, guys, like I didn't always have someone tell me, go to a meeting. Like, you're an alcoholic. It's because I was in such a panic mode. I got really lucky sometimes on alcoholic, like stupid shit I did. Like I knew, or like I just knew I drank so much and I was poisoning myself that I was like, I need to go to Jack and go get this fixed. You know what I mean? But I just didn't listen. So I tried several times in Kansas, several times to go to meetings. Nothing worked. I did the Jesus thing. I remember pulling out my Bible. I shaved my head. I love this. So you'll change physical attributes by yourself. I'll shave my head and get more into my meditation. Nope.
I'm going to look like a monk.
Yeah, right? No, totally. That happened once. Totally bad. Looked like the guy from Live, but like, horrible. So anyways, I was once doing a fifth step with a sponsor and he was late and I was pissed and I'm New York City. So I was in Manhattan. He doesn't show up. I just walked to a bar. There you go. So, and, it wasn't cool. Not cool for my relationship. Not cool for anything. So, there was always little sprinkles of trying to, right? I mean, I had a guy in Brooklyn one time give me his I still have it. It's my personal copy of the big book that this older guy gave me. And I still have it. And notes from the guy that was late. There's still notes from him. He was an old biker. But nothing set, like I tried stuff and then I tried therapy a couple times, you know what I mean? So none of that really, really works. If you're trying something, guys, I'm going to always tell you, always try something.
Yeah.
Oh, at least always try something.
Always.
You might drop and fail. And dude, I did 7 times. And it's kind of hard because sometimes you listen to these old timers and everything's this miracle story. And I kind of have a little like a miracle story, but I don't, because the real story of the miracle is the work afterwards. Some people get it. Some people, don't. But I would say multiple times when I went, my wife would say, you got to go to the meetings or, like that, or somebody I was, friends like that, I would try it. And then I would try to say stuff to make people think you're doing the right thing. And then you would fall off. The key thing that never did there was work. So if you're not going to work, but the really big thing about why it didn't work, and this is what I would like, because I think, Nick, you're going to be slamming on this stuff. And it's basically what I tell when I talk to drunks now. What's going to save your life, and we just kind of touched on it, and what started turning me around was acceptance.
Yeah.
And that also, too, was the gateway into the amazing recovery that I've actually led to now. So I never accepted it for the longest time. So the 7 times I tried AA or tried therapy or tried like taking some kind of antidepressant, the acceptance was never there. I was still playing the victim. I had some childhood trauma. Dude, the kids in Gaza have childhood trauma. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I just wasn't ready. I wasn't an adult enough. I didn't accept it. So when I started, I tried for the longest time. And actually, to be honest with you, yes, like at 25, when I started noticing there was an issue with it, I probably tried it some way. I read books by Mel Ash, who's a really crazy Zen dude. Lots of the early philosophy. I mean, I tried anything spiritual under the sun. That was me.
Dude, all those things matter in that process.
Oh,
So they're all little seeds that get planted along the way. And you may not, but the fact that like you came back and started watering them at some point allowed all of them to take root. I
can't wait to tell you about that in a few minutes, because that garden that is growing now is awesome.
Right.
Like I'm like Timothy Leary in happiness. Like I'm trippy, man. This is awesome, dude. Like everything I wanted as a countercultural writer, philosopher, spiritualist, Christian, Buddhist, I don't know, alien, I don't know what, it just happens in my life now because it's awesome. So, but I was trying all these things and all these messages were coming in, and I just like literally like I had like earplugs in. It just wasn't filtering in the right way. So some people have to have a catalyst. They do say you have to hit that rock bottom. Okay.
Yeah.
2012-ish, we moved from New York. My wife.
When did you meet your wife?
Oh, so I met the most amazing person in the world. I met her in 2006. We started dating between 2006 and 7. I can't, babe. I love you, but I don't know how lucky. And sometimes, you know what? Hell, I'll say we're destined to be together.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I don't know. I'm a pretty scientific dude, so sometimes I call bull on stuff. But like, you know, my wife swears my mother was my guardian angel because I just be honest with you. So many such. I took a swing at a New York cop once. Like, I'm lucky I'm here. um, but so, anyways, we and she went through some of that. She like my 39th, no, my 29th birthday or something like that. She carried me up the stairs to her apartment. Like that was horrible. That's embarrassing, dudes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
So she was with you while you were in the
oh
pit.
yeah. She from I would say from 2000. I was drinking up until 2012. So she was with me for a big chunk of this. And I, you know, and she's the most amazing tough person ever. She actually did Al-Anon when I finally decided to get my head out of my ass. And that's what it is, gentlemen. I'm not going to brass tacks anymore. You know, from here on out, I'm going to talk recovery stuff, and I'm going to be kind of like, yo, because it is. You have a disease, and it's going to kill you or keep you away from what you love. Yeah, I put her through some hell through those times. You know, like, you know, it sucked. And I'm very blessed to be where we're at. And part of the thing, I think I got there. So if we can kind of, where are we at right now? What tools and skills did I start to rebuild?
Yep.
In order to get there, I'm going to tell you what changed me.
Okay.
So we moved to Minnesota. Not the biggest fan, multiple reasons. One, I got caught. I hadn't driven like in 10 years or something like that. Finally get my driver's license back, you know. First thing I'm doing is like I'm drinking and driving. I finally get a DUI. Around this time, my wife tells me she's pregnant. Okay. I got my DUI. It was after a couple days after Christmas. We were going to move to Iowa. My wife had told me she was pregnant. I had taken like 10 grand out of my 401k or whatever, so that we could do this move. Right. I thought I was cool shit, and I went out and I got wasted. Someone saw me driving that was serving me alcohol, and they're an angel now. I don't know who you were, but you called the cops on me, and you did the right thing. So I got pulled over in one of those apartment under garages. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the first thing I tell the female cop, like, dude, I won. She's like, what? I was like, yeah, I made it home. Fuck off. You know, no, that's not a good thing. And it was bad. It was bad. It was bad. My wife was pissed. She was in Iowa at the time. So I actually wound up, because she was out of town. I spent 3 days in Hennepin County jail. Cold as shit, like totally shaking. Like
Detoxing.
oh yeah, like they have these horrible hot dogs in jail, and I meant edible ones. I'm not talking about. Nothing else happened. So, wasn't that kind of prison yet, but I for like 3 days, and I'm sure you've had hangovers like this. It was the worst. Like I had no communication outside world.
Oh.
So I didn't talk to my wife for 3 days. Basically, I was in the cell. I was supposed to be a soon-to-be father. I had already quit my job, which I obviously so. I was like sitting there. I'm like, there's nothing left. There's nothing left. And then in the back of my head, I'm like, well, you just go back to New York. Just do what you're doing. Where did that thought come from? A-hole? You know what I mean? Like I went on that third day. I think finally we started getting hold. I think my dad wound up posting bail for me. And remember the guard at one point was like, kid, you don't belong here. You need to figure this out. And my wife was pissed, and she should be. I mean, she's pregnant with
rightfully so.
Right. Yeah. Pregnant. And then this bag of dicks just got arrested. You know, I was counting on him. Way to go, Matt. So she was in Iowa and I was in Minnesota. I got released, put my shoestrings back in my shoes, had to talk to a bondsman or something, had to get a cab home.
From Minnesota.
Well, we lived in Minnesota at the time.
Okay.
Anyways, and I'm open the door to this apartment that's empty because she's not there. And I'm going to tell you, this is where, because I had at that point tried to get sober multiple times and lied to everybody and whatever. I don't know how to explain this to you, and not everybody's going to have a magical moment. But I I got inside, put my key and stuff in the bowl, and I laid down on the floor. I mean, like legit, just laid down. And I stared at the ceiling for, I don't know, it seemed like 15, 20 minutes. And I remember uttering these words exactly. And this is what I tell a lot of young guys when I talk to them, because I want them to hear what I had to say. I looked up, you can call it God, Jesus. I looked up to the universe and I said, I give up. I give up. I give up. I give up. I just kept, I give up. I give up. I give up. And it was silent. My phone wasn't ringing for my wife. She did not want to hear from me. My dad wasn't the best on how to deal with that. Plus, at that time, too, my brother was an alcoholic, so he's dealing with him in his neighborhood. I had no friends in Minnesota, like these people I started working with just recently. So that wasn't like, I was like, there's nothing.
Alone.
That's what I felt. You know what I mean? So after like how many times I said I give up, I sat on the couch and I remembered that I had my big book buried in this little bookshelf in the bedroom. So I go grab my big book and I turned to page 417, which one of my sponsors earlier had, highlighted and underlined the acceptance paragraph. And I read that real quick. And the first thing I did, I think it was like on a Friday or something like that, is I called in a group from Minnesota. And I was like, dudes, I'm in a lot of pain. I don't know what to do. So they got me to talk to somebody. And this guy named, we do first names. So some guy named Scott. He calls me and this goofy Minnesota accent. I'm like, oh God, whatever. And he's like, yo, I'm going to pick you up tomorrow. Okay. And then we're going to go to this evening meeting. Can you be okay between now and tomorrow? I'm like, dude, I feel like dog shit. I probably sleep most of the time. And I did. I didn't even sleep in my bed. I curled up by the heat register in the corner. Like that's mental illness, guys. Like that's how, like I was acting like a kid trying to protect myself. So he picks me up the next night. And for the first time, and again, the key words were, I give up. I just let it go. I didn't have my car really. I couldn't drive and leave. This guy took me to this huge meeting. And he was joking. He's like, I bet you got some wicked drunk stories to tell from New York and stuff. And I was like, yeah. But that was the first one. And then he took me to one a day after that. And then I started doing that. The thing is real important, guys. The 90 meetings in 90 days, I really encourage that. And if you don't like one of the meetings, go do two. Find a different one. You know what I mean? So for me, folks, I give up. It's that moment where the doctor has the cancer diagnosis and he's like, dude, that's the lump in your brain or whatever. And we got to take that out. Either you do it or you don't. And I said, okay. And what was different this time was I got a couple different things. I'm very lucky to have a family support group. My mother-in-law and my father-in-law and my wife. My wife did Al-Anon, which actually right now I'm reading her Al-Anon books because my brother's off the wagon and in rehab right now. And it helps out a lot. But she did something that was really good for me too, which was totally different than times before. She had a very healthy detachment. So that first beginning of my sobriety, I was by myself in Minnesota while she was away. And she's like, it's in your court. You make the decision. You know what I mean? That's where that story at the little fork in the road came out. Mm-hmm. And guys, trust me, that first month or so, it does suck. I know. What am I supposed to do with myself? Well, I actually do some pretty cool artwork. I read a lot of my big book, and you don't, but yeah, you're going to have to figure out what to do to keep busy, and you're going to have to work on you need to survive. And so that early childhood. So again, a lot of stuff goes back, that humor, that fighting spirit, but without the confidence. Like I had to tap into some of that and realize I need to survive. And, one of the, I think, podcasts that you had, and also one I listened on, that Sober Motivation, is also finding something to live for. I had always envisioned since the moment she told me that she was pregnant, this little child in the car seat next to me and just giving me all kinds of hell because I know they do it now too. And I just, for some reason, that would seem like a cool thing. I like wanted to be like, I never wanted to have kids until she told me. I mean, like, we had planned on having kids, but for the longest time, I was like, no kids. And then I'm like, yo, this being a father, it was electrifying. So then that was
it's crazy. So, I just want to share something real quick. I was on a big road trip this week, and we drove back from Pennsylvania yesterday. Woo! And my son, my 4-year-old son, was singing like "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star" in the back seat and stuff like that. And I was like, I wanted to give him a different one to sing because he kind of, it's like when you rub, like somebody pets a dog and then all of a sudden like it feels good to him at first and then it starts to hurt. It was like, okay, stop
with
you know
the twinkle.
What I mean? So we started singing "You Are My Sunshine."
Good one.
And dude, I just started bawling.
Yes.
And it's like, you don't know how important fatherhood is until your 4-year-old kid sings "You Are My Sunshine"
Dad
with
level
you.
like 300 hits you, right?
My wife looks over, she goes, "Are you okay?" I'm like,
no,
I'm gonna be okay.
Do you cry during certain commercials?
Sometimes.
Welcome to the club, man.
You can be as hard as you want in this world.
And be like, what's up with that little kid? Someone feed that child.
So yeah, when you talk about parenthood and becoming a father, that's.
So I think as long as you can do it healthily, being a good parent is a good focus too. You also don't want, you have to be careful in those first steps, especially in the beginning, because you also don't want to make that the thing to make you sober. So when you're getting sober in the beginning, folks, you need to decide that it is me. I gave up. I've hit this bottom. I have come to acceptance. And so I'm not going to read it. I was going to have it on my phone.
You can.
I don't have it. It's on my phone. But page 417 in the big book. And what it basically says is like, it's acceptance is the key. So when I come to the conclusion and accept that something in my life, people, place, or things that is making me uncomfortable is not right, acceptance is the key. If I can accept that, and that's a part of whatever big God, like sometimes I'd be very careful with new people because some people don't want to hear about God.
Right.
But if I can accept that that's what's supposed to be happening, that acceptance is the key. Without the acceptance, folks, you're still shit out of luck. Hear that?
100%.
You're fucked. I'm just gonna. Sorry,
yep.
I should.
No, you're fine.
So if you're drinking right now or you're trying to get sober and you have to accept it, and I can't do that for you. So either I can come at you hard like this, like, dude, you're screwed. Or I could be like, hey, man, you should go get there. Whatever way you need to accept it, just do it. That's that key to that Ferrari or that whatever.
Right.
That's that moment. Because that's what's going to save you.
Someone once told me to conform is the enemy of transform. And I was like,
whoa. That's epic.
Yeah.
I'm going to put that in my notes.
Write that down in your notebook there. That's it. But that's like, nobody can make that happen. You cannot forcefully make someone conform, because by doing that, you're taking their ability to transform away from them.
Well, that's what's kind of hard. I think if you can listen to us talk right now, there's only one way to get at this kind of confidence, and that's the transformation. So I remember I've been alluding to a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about throughout these stories. My dad used to like listen to my brother and I talk about science and philosophy. And he's like, you guys have like 8 conversations, but they all tie back into one. I'm like, that's because the universe is all whatever. A lot of goes out with my story because these things that you see sprinkled into my past, we're setting up for some of the stuff. What you're looking for oftentimes too when you're drunk or whatever, these needs and these things you're trying to fill and these problems that you're facing, when you make that acceptance. It's like when people are like, I was saved by the Lord Jesus and my whole life changed. I have meditated for, in the garden or whatever. That kind of stuff only happens when they come to this moment and they don't conform. They transform. It's acceptance. Like Buddha came to it like, life sucks. Here's 4 truths about that. Jesus is like, I am the way, man. Like, y'all suck. You have to make that acceptance. Otherwise, none of this is going to work. So once I came to that acceptance, I'm like, I am an alcoholic. That was the biggest step. And I go to a meeting. Hi, Matt. I'm an alcoholic. Hi, Matt. How you doing? But yeah, but I know it sounds goofy and they make fun of it. That's going to be great. Keep doing it. And then all that amazing transformation, everything I tried to find in my life, the promises, and we'll talk about that. This is all coming true. Now, it's not going to be right away. It is going to be get your waders out, get some duck boots on. You're going to go through shit and hell until you get to this kind of point. And even then, I have days where like I get in a fight with a family member and I'll call him, like my sponsor. I'm like, dude, I can't take these people right now.
Right.
He's like, did you react? I'm like, yeah, I kind of reacted. He's like, what'd you do? I'm like, oh, fuck you. Beep, beep, beep. He goes, is that the right way to do it? Once you get sober, you're going to learn through the program or whatever you're doing in therapy how to handle things. So yes, the acceptance was the key. The acceptance was the key for me. So if that's the only thing I can stress to the listeners and the climax and resolution stuff is if you need to come to a point of acceptance, and it can't be about all the shame yet and all the stuff that you went through. Believe me, you're going to get hit in the face with that really soon and probably need some new teeth. But that first moment of liberation is when you can say, I accept that I'm an alcoholic. This is step one.
Yeah.
And they say it all the time. Why do you think that's so big in AA or any of these rehab places? You won't be able to go anywhere if you can't do that. You'll be right back. So once that happens, trust me, I know it's the hardest first step, right? What they say is the hardest step is always
that's the breaking of the stigma.
Yeah.
Right. That's the breakthrough of the fear. Like, okay, there's all these things I'm scared of because if I say this, then I have to wear that scarlet letter. Yeah. Alcoholic.
Yep.
Addict.
And there's a lot to you wear that. Yeah.
It's terrifying.
It's stamped.
Yeah.
So maybe through these kind of things too, like with your podcast, I was telling you, if you guys can hear that after that is stamped on you, it kind of sucks at first. I admit it. But if you can make it through it and look where you can be, and it's not going to be my story. Like my story is my own success. It has its own crap. But I want to hear eventually. What I love hearing is when other people's like, I love when people come to me like, dude, you're right. One day at a time totally works. I'm like, yeah, it does. Tell me about your stuff. Well, I do some really lame stuff, gardening now. Yeah. I mean, I know this sounds stupid, but you can still be kick-ass dude. But it's without that first step, you're just nothing. So acceptance is key. And then we can move on to the resolution.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa.
You kind of trigger excitement in me when it comes to talking about like that's, I hope for other people as they get sober, like you can eventually, you're going to go through a lot of pain and there's going to be people that probably just don't like, there's going to be emotional and hard things to go through. But when you can get the acceptance and the work going, find that joy.
Yeah.
Because you just got a second lease, dude, seriously, a second lease on life.
Huge.
Like huge.
And there are so many people that will rally behind you and support you in that because like we talked about earlier, there's a ton of them are just, whether you burnt the bridge or you still have them in your life, they're praying for you to get to that point because there was a reason that they were in your life. And it was because that you were awesome at some point and you were attractive to them at some point and you had value to them and you had that. And then addiction sucked it all out. Right. But they're praying for you to get back there, whether they want you to be in their life anymore or not. They want you to get better and
to survive.
And they're going to be rooting for you. All the bridges that you burnt, those people are still on the other side of that bridge saying, I hope you make it, man.
And you know what? That's huge. That's huge for you to realize. I think one of the biggest mistakes I made when I first tried to get sober was not on the acceptance part, not to put that, like you said, that letter.
Yeah.
And I get it. Like, I'm the alcoholic now. Like, don't listen to the like, was it Friends that did the episode where like the guy got sober and like this dude's so not fun anymore. And so then like now we want him to drink again. Like, I'm not going to joke. Like episodes like that and stuff, whether you know it or not, are in your head from when you're growing up.
They are, dude. White noise. It's there.
So you're going to try not to do it. And I had some strong support. Not only was my wife really awesome. You want to hear something that's really cool? My mother-in-law, who is a pastor, every month that I was getting sober in the beginning, she would give me sunglasses with something written on it. Why? Because your future's so bright kind of stuff. Come on. like cheesy, but it worked. And I have a lot of those sunglasses. So much cool now that my daughter borrowed some sunglasses for school the other day. And she goes, "Why is there writing on the inside of the sunglasses?" I'm like, "Because that's the Nana when I was getting sober." Wearing the badge now, dude, it's liberating. I love it. I'm sorry, man.
I do too.
I kind of feel in a way too, like I almost feel like it's one of those, and this is kind of, see, you can still be conceited and be a jerk when you're
You
sober.
can still be a
But I
selfish
kind of
jerk.
sometimes feel like that, like it's some kind of like crazy show, and I'm like that old rocker that, man, I got sober, but I did a really cool weekend. I had a great ride, man.
Yeah.
And I don't want to portray it that way. I definitely feel rock star badass.
Yeah.
But it's also because I'm not afraid to tell people that I'm a sober dude. I on a given day, I will tell someone, I'm sober 11 years now, man. Oh, really? And it's discouraging in the beginning if you're around the same circle of friends and you're telling them that. Well, yeah, they're not going to think it's cool. But when you've changed your life and you're working on support groups and stuff like that, you will be surprised, actually, especially after the pandemic, how many people have struggled with addiction, who are struggling with depression, who are parents, and they're like, dude, there's no manual for this like crazy conflict called parenting. And you just like walk up to them like, hey, man, I got this for like 11 years. Whew, that's crazy. Hey, by the way, you're changing that diaper wrong. It's not the way to do that, bro. There's no other way to say it, and you can't drink the punch until you drink it. You know what I mean? But like, I love it. Wearing that letter, that's part of my success too, because now I meet people all the time. Like I met you through like our friend Chris.
Yeah.
And he's got his thing going. I had a customer call, and he was really weird and excited. And I have no problem saying I'm sober. Next thing he's like, well, I'm like a year sober, and I hit like 4 meetings a day. And I'm like, well, cool, man. I've had the thing too, where it's cliche, but like someone walk in the office and they'll say something, I go, do you know Bill?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind of fun. I met somebody, the other day. And so you'd be surprised if you wear that badge, how awesome and enriched your life will get.
Yeah. Yeah. So just getting back to acceptance, it's huge. And
Yes.
it is mandatory. It is like, there's no way around it. You can't be like, oh, I'm going to cure out my alcoholism and not admit to anybody that I'm an alcoholic.
Oh no.
You just got to embrace that. Again, you have to tell people you're taking chemo.
Oh yeah. They're going to know, dude, your hair falling out. Bad shampoo. No,
yeah.
Like you're taking chemo.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you're not, without the acceptance, it's not you doing it.
Correct. You're playing a part. You're doing a character.
And then you're going to victimize somebody else.
You're lying.
Like, I'm getting sober for my family. What if your family dies, bro? Like, you're back to it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Don't put that on them too. That's not them. This is you. You're
the one for you.
You're the one that made the mistakes. It's accountability. And since it's domestic dad stuff, like parenting, that's huge. Accountability is huge. And it's not just that, it's also accountability to your community. You know what I mean? Like that's going to be huge. Acceptance is that first step. And then after that, I'm going to tell something what really helped me to everybody. I don't know what worked for you, Nick, when you were first starting out. Like what did you like? Cause you obviously hit acceptance. So what?
Yeah. So, when I was just going through it, like there were several times in my journey where I can remember my mom being like, dude, you brought a 12-pack to Christmas, and then you went through the 12-pack and you had to go get like more beer at Christmas. Like, what do you like? There's a problem. And I'm like, oh yeah. So I hit a meeting, right? I'm like, okay, I'm going to do AA. And then I didn't, you know what I mean? And then I went home and drank that night. You know what I'm saying? And then there was all these like, and then there was a point in time where, it was just causing really big problems in my life. And I'd go back to a meeting or I'd go to counseling. Like I actually went to counseling for some stuff, and counselor's like, hey man, are you an alcoholic? And I'm like, no, I'm not, and it finally got to a point where, all the physical stuff plus the mental health stuff started compiling and layering on top of me, where the vomiting was there. The heartburn was there. That like, I was in what I would say I was going to die. You know what I mean? Like it was, if it had continued, I was going to die. Yeah. And, I had gone to a church thing called Men's Transformation Group at one point in time, where a bunch of guys get together and talk about their sin and things like that. And so I'd met somebody there. So it was like a multitude of things, but I went to an IOP program.
Mm-hmm.
The counselor there was somebody who didn't act as a counselor, but as a peer, because they had gone through something as well.
Right.
So I could relate, opposed to I'm going to a counselor to tell them about what I'm going through. The guy who led the men's transformation group, I started meeting with on Friday mornings.
Cool.
So I don't know if you wouldn't call him a sponsor, but you wouldn't identify as a sponsor.
Kind
You'd
of
get
the
more
same
of
role.
like a mentor, if you will. Right. So similar role, like I could call him. But there were many times that I fell down before I got to the point where like I did IOP, I did peer coaching, I did connect with other people. It was just like all of these seeds came to fruition for me.
That's awesome.
Where I was able to start putting the pieces together. And my wife, it was really my wife. When I talk about going to like an IOP program, it was like, hey, babe, this is 3 hours a night, 3 nights a week. And she was like, and on Fridays, right? Like, and then I have to go and do this. And then I'm going to meet so like several meetings, right?
Right.
A lot of time, a lot of investment. And I was just like, I don't know if I want to do this. She was like, you can't do anything for me or our kids or your kids until you get help for you. Exactly. And at that moment right there, when she spit that at me, I was like, you're right.
You're right. If you're going to be there for them, you got to be there for yourself. That's important. I hope people really listen to that. You know what I mean? Because that's kind of where and it's not the fun. Like, recovery is every day. But once I hit the acceptance thing, my wife would. You're going to you need to make the time. You need to make the time. So now I had to finally schedule the time to go to these meetings. I had to schedule the time for the therapist, and so I encourage. For those of it, I mean, most of us drunks have a lot of things in common, and that's why it's good to talk. A lot of you young guys and old guys that are still drunk remind me constantly. So as you're getting to that acceptance, you hit that acceptance phase. Here's what I suggest next, though. You're going to start doing stuff that it's not in character. Okay. So when I say like, that's what, when I first tried, everyone's like, well, go to a meeting. Okay. I'm going to show up and go to a meeting. Like, it didn't work. Go get therapy. Okay. Have you ever done anything without kind of a plan and got somewhere?
No.
No. So one of the things that was different when I finally did the acceptance thing was, my goal was to stay sober. First goal was acceptance. Second goal, I want to stay sober, stay away from it, not to pick up the next drink. And that's one of the things that all these old timers are going to drill in your head. If that's the second thing, acceptance, and the second thing they can yell at you about, don't touch it. That's bad. Okay. And it seems so stupid, but believe me, alcoholics, we are pretty dumb, cunning, baffling, confusing. Why we do it. And then after that, have a plan. Like what? And then for me as an alcoholic, I never finished college. I had bosses. I'm like, dude, you could own your own store, this grocery store. You'd be making $100,000 a year within a couple of years if you just stick to it. I never did. So
goes back to we talk about it,
yeah, right,
but we don't finish it.
So what was different this time? It was funny because other things had changed too, like with my wife. So like when we sometimes we disagree on stuff, like instead of just listening, I'll actually take notes. Like, what do you need me to do? Like, what in this situation? So I need to help with this. She's, are you taking notes right now? I'm like, yeah, because like my way my brain is, like, I want to make sure that what you're saying is being heard. And so if I hear it, I remember so much. But if I write it down, she's like, who are you? Like that.
Dude, that's why I bought these domestic pad notepads. I'm like, dude, right? Because if you don't write stuff down, you'll forget it. And you cannot complete the task or the goal or remember that really important anecdote that you pick up in your life. Right. Oh, yeah. To conform is the enemy of transform. Right. Like things like that. I have to write that stuff down because it means so much.
So what I will tell you, one of my secrets, using like AA and then using therapy. So I knew I had some dark SHIT to get through from growing up. Like, I had to figure that out. Plus, on top of that, I was married why I was drinking and caused some toxic, crap, so I needed to work through that too to become a better person. So I had to sit down with myself and with these people. So with my therapist, I'm like, listen, we need to unmask some of this pain from childhood. I need some help with how to communicate, which I had to do again. I eventually went out. I'll tell you about not went out drinking, but I eventually went back to therapy a while back ago when I got Lyme disease because it kind of threw me for a loop. But and so with my therapist, I had a goal, and I actually had to switch once or twice to find the right person. Because you can go to a therapist and you might get a wishy-washy one that just wants to fill their hours. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I would tell her, like, here's my goals, and I kind of want to meet them. Like, what do you think? How we're making? Like, how is this about my childhood? Are we making some progress? You think that, like, keep on that. Otherwise, what are you doing? And then that was what I realized with AA too. What would I do before? I'm going to go through all the steps with my sponsor. That's important if that's what you're sponsoring, you think you should do, or if that's what's helping you out. Okay. And I'd done the steps and it, to the best of my ability with people before. And I did it this last time too with, in a different way with this one guy. But he also suggested to me, since I had been in and out of the program so many times, he's like, we're going to go through the steps with you again. You want to do an inventory? You're a dick bag. Okay. What he asked me to also find something to really hold on to. And I'm going to tell you what I hold on to. And I hope anybody who's struggling right now, if you've got to acceptance and you're in the beginning, grab every time you're at a meeting and they pass the promises around, I want you to, for the next however long you feel comfortable doing it, read the promises, because what you need, if you've kind of failed so many times, is something to show you to navigate, or something that's going to tell you what can happen. Because a lot of times we get into it, one, because we don't have anywhere else to go. Hopefully we've accepted it, but then we still feel lost. Well, so I'm sober. What am I supposed to do? Guys, they gave you a laminated, nasty, germy card telling you what the promises are going to be. And it's something we overlook all the time. When I go to meetings now, or when I'm at work or whatever, I have copies of it. I will close my eyes and I go through the promises. And that has always been my empirical mind that wants to see evidence. That has come true. So if you go through the promises in my life, like, one, how to handle situations without fear and insecurity, or with people and places and situations, way better at it. I mean, uncomfortable situations I can handle. Humility and stuff like that too. I I am still a reactionary kind of person. If I know that I've done something wrong, I seek to ask for guidance, and I seek to apologize to that person. Financial insecurity, oh man, my head's clear now. I manage a great business, and I do make way, like, it happens. People are like, oh, I'm never gonna. Maybe you weren't meant to be rich. Get that out of your head.
Yeah.
Measure this. This is something you can measure. You are
Profit is not the reason
right.
to go to work. It's the reward for doing good work.
Are you sleeping on a bench, or do you have your own apartment? You
Right.
made progress. So take it while you can get it. So all those promises, that's what I just gave my personal copy to a guy not too long ago, and I hope he's still working one day at a time. But that's what you need. But like this time, go in there, make your acceptance, and get with somebody and work on this plan. But it's got to be coming from you to make that change. And that's part of, I think, I see when I listen to you talk on some of these podcasts and just in person with you, is you've done that. And that's why you have this confidence. I have a loving sense of accomplishment and confidence now. I've never, this is not, if you look at Matt now, and there's all kinds of fun stories. Even when I was a cute little kid, that's a certain kind of Matt. This is where it's almost like the end of some great movie. This is where I was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And it was hell to get here.
You're an elite version of yourself.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm blessed. Like, there was a one chance, like that door. Well, the door can open lots of times, just whether you're at the station or not. I took that chance to hop on that train.
Yep.
And I'm glad now. I look at my two children, and I'm telling them, this is awesome. Like, a lot of people want me to do a lot of stuff with them, and I really try. But between the business and the kids, like, I'm at that time when they're just at the right age where we're real busy.
How old are you kids?
10 and 8.
10 and 8.
And awesome. Fireballs, firecrackers, ornery, smart. I got my hands full, but I wouldn't have any other way. And my wife and I still have communication issues. I have to learn, but that's a part of this now. Is I have the ability to admit when I'm wrong. I have the ability, like all these things that never existed before. I'm telling you, folks, I've been where you've been at, and you're not going to listen until you're ready to listen. So we're going to do this podcast, and maybe hopefully you'll play it 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Rewind back to acceptance real quick. Like just play it through again. But yeah, the elite version of myself. And I was looking at when we're going through the stuff on the questions you ask. I actually wrote the note. When you're talking about what are your triggers, what keeps you smiling today, and stuff like that. You know what makes me smile sometimes is you drunk bastards. I know that's really morbid and evil right now because I'm not trying to make light of your horrible life situation. But hey, I will tell you to your face if you come to my office, I'm like, hey, thank you, brother. You kept me sober for 24 hours. Why is that? Because you smell and your life is really troublesome.
Yeah.
And I've been there.
I can literally see it on you. All of the stuff that I can see the mess.
You gave me 24 insurance. You. It's like going to a meeting without going to a meeting now. You know what I mean? Or it's an opportunity to share with you. You know what I mean? And I have people that sometimes have called the office where I work at and like, hey man, my son's, he's struggling right now. I'm going to send him down. I mean, I'm not going to be your magic sponsor. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's a list of meetings around. Here's like 6 numbers to call. Some of the guys I called when I first got to Waterloo. And if you're in this area, there is such a great group of people here. Whether if you want to go the religious route, if you want to go just to a meeting, if you want to go to a rehab, people here get sober and are awesome.
Yeah.
Like this is a great place. I've said this so many times, Waterloo, whatever it was about this place, probably because of the situation time, everything that was culminating, I was glad I was here because I met the right people.
Yeah.
There were people in the first few meetings that saw my son was like an infant. He would come. My wife would go to Al-Anon and I would go to the the AA meeting.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm holding the baby. And now I'm like, how old is he? I'm like, he's 10. Holy moly.
Yeah.
I know, right? That's crazy.
Yeah.
So
it's wild to me because if you watch this or listen to this podcast, look at the group of people that have come through this room right here.
Yeah.
And all of the things that they've been through. There is such a great community of resources available to anybody that wants to traverse the journey of sobriety, parenting, or personal growth.
Yep.
Right here, right now. And it is awesome. How many just great people we've got.
I think if people can get to this point, like when you will text or call, like it's exciting, man. You want to talk about like, what's your childhood like? It's like right now I meet cool people like this. I feel like when like, hey, would you want to have lunch with me and go play Foursquare? It's like you kids, you get, that youthful excitement. Yes. Because I know like you're making it, man. You're not dying. You understand that. I'm not dying. Like, it's like, holy shit. Yes, we made it through. I mean, it's like maybe the few Titanic survivors in the boat. Like, oh shit. We're not on that thing, so good for us. And that's what's so cool. And it's one of the things, and it's going to take time for people who are using to understand that. I mean, because like I said, 7 sometimes it took me to figure that stuff out. I had to hit that, whether it was being in Hennepin County for 3 days, whether it was realizing I had nowhere else to go, I lost it, or I could lose. Like I knew I could lose everything. Like my wife is amazing. I almost lost that. My now son, he wasn't born yet. I hadn't even met him yet. And I was like, I'm going to lose that.
Yeah.
And then I was like sitting in that jail cell and I was like, what am I going to have? There was like looking to the future. There was nothing but murkiness.
Even worse, what are they going to remember of me?
Right.
And that was one of when you say, hey, what happened with you? That was one of the things that really sat with me in a bad way. Like, have I created the best legacy for my children to look back on and say, I had a good dad.
Yeah.
I had a good dad. Right. Yeah. I don't think that they're probably maybe,
right.
Maybe if you like really edited it, right.
Yeah,
like,
right.
And you only took these little small pieces from my life, you could be like, oh, he was good. You know what I mean? But like, what can we do today to give them a legacy that they can be proud of?
Totally. And there's nothing wrong. Like, in fact, actually the world would change a lot. One, if we let moms take the credit they're supposed to credit, because without moms, we're screwed. But also too, there's nothing wrong with saying, I want to be the best dad possible. Why can't we put more energy into that? I said this once on Facebook. Why we invest in so much? Why aren't we investing in encouragement?
Right.
You don't realize how important it is. Now, sometimes for alcoholics, you do need to be told to shut. I mean, I remember distinctly in the rooms, an old guy with oxygen mask, and I was pity partying in the beginning, like here in Waterloo. And I was like complaining, and he's like, shut the up. And he's like, poor me, and his shaky old hand. And he's like, if you say poor me, you're going to pour yourself another one. And he was rough with me. Like every time I come in the room, he just scowl at me. Like, yeah, so it's not no kid trying to get sober. And it really had an impact on me. I'm like, no, I don't even know you,
Right.
So, but no, the dad thing, go with acceptance, or I'm a recap guy. Acceptance, find a plan, find something that you're going to stick to. I actually do. I tell a guy like 90 and 90. I know I used to scoff at that the first 6 or 7 times, but that's repetition. Get with somebody that knows some literature. I used to read, you have the big book, and what's the other one? There's that weird yellow book. There's a bunch of little books that they give you. Some of it, guys, I'm going to be honest with you, there's a lot of literature. Find the ones that need to speak to you, and get into those. And then just don't read them and sit with it. Make sure hey, I have a question. I know it's going to sound stupid. Talk to an old timer. Have him tell you stories. And then 2, what keeps you sober is connection with other drunks.
Yeah. And here, okay. So I want to talk about this just a little bit.
You got it, man.
We cannot forget to reflect on the pain that we cause other people,
right,
in our when we were drunks.
Right.
And I say that, I want to do a whole episode on this someday, but
you should.
Just going to be vulnerable. What I did to my wife in my alcoholism, during my alcoholism, what I did to my kids, and we cannot forget about that stuff. You shouldn't think about it all the time, but you should use it as motivation as to who you are when you take one drink.
So that will go to what I was going to say. I didn't know if when I mentioned, sir, one of the things when it says like what keeps you smiling, or like what, not the triggers, but what are you doing to stay sober? And I wrote, where is it at? There's all this goofy stuff. Play it backwards. Who was it? Was it Dale? Is it you, Dale? The play it backwards thing really, again, I'm an empirical kind of person. I have lots of faith. My faith is soared. That's a huge trippy conversation. But for me, I need to play it backwards. Okay. If I play it backwards right now, just a little back, I can taste and think and see that pain in that jail cell, the distrust. Like we moved in with our in-laws, after that, my wife's parents, for like a month or so. Like it wasn't fun for them.
Having to be dependent on other people that way.
It was not fun for them.
Yeah.
Obviously, it wasn't fun for us. And I had I'm like at this point face to face with the 3 people I've hurt the most, and then my unborn son. You know what I mean? So I'm playing that back. All right, and I just keep playing it back, and every time you're playing it back, okay, there's a situation where I picked up, and then now I can fast forward it. Yeah, shit.
Yep.
Okay, let's go right back to 2003. I picked it up in that situation. Nothing good came out of that.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's important. Like you said, so you're not focusing on that stuff. Like you said, careful of the shame stuff, ownership, accountability. And I mean, there's lots of trust issues. You know how long it took my wife to trust me? Dude, my mother-in-law, like I'd be like, I got to go get gas. You're getting gas, right? Like, dude, that's embarrassing. But yeah, I deserve that.
Same.
Same.
I would leave the house intentionally just to go just to stop at the gas station and buy a couple of shooters.
Yeah.
That was a thing for me. That was the fact that they sell shots and hard liquor in gas stations in Iowa is like, I don't know, man. I don't love that.
No.
Because it took a lot. Like I had to drive by when I was doing IOP, I had to drive by like 6 like liquor stores in order to get there, and then 6 back, and that was hard in those moments. Sometimes you think about that, it's like, dang.
I was in New York City trying to get sober. Like you go around a corner and there's some kind of illicit subject. I mean, like you could drink anywhere. 40s bars. And actually, if you're an alcoholic, what's the thing of the joke that I remember in the meetings, like. What if an alcoholic wins a contest where they get a whole semi-trailer full of beer? What's the first thing the alcoholic thinks about? And where am I going to get my next beer after all this is done?
Yeah,
dude, you have a truckload.
Yeah,
you'll find it. You'll find it. So,
yeah.
But for me, the key thing too, and I never really once you go, you accept it, you're working on your plan, and then you're making those amends, and you've got this thing, and you've got the accountability, and it's rough. Like, you got to go through all that stuff. And that's not only is it making you do what's right, it's also strengthening your character. You're kind of building a new character, dude. Like, you're a new person. It's like a whole born again
You
thing.
really do
Yeah,
get to be
it's like
brand
a
new.
whole born again person thing, or whatever. You're the little, what do they call it?
But it's real. It's not a character totally anymore. It's actually who you get to be.
Your little guruship. You're totally a new person. You're your own little Bada Vista world. You're new. Yeah. And some people, you know what? They're not going to like it. That's okay. That's any transformations like that. And it's not a cult, folks. Like, I think some people who, if they don't do the acceptance thing right away, they can actually make certain recovery things their new addiction. Like, that's anything can be dangerous. The thing is, though, is you can tell.
Yeah.
That's going to stick. That's a sore thumb sticking out. Because what happens when you get in recovery, what happens when you do acceptance and you work the plans and you do these things, is you can tell there's a level of energy and life back in the person. There's a level of acceptance for a lot of things. There's a humility. There's all these things at play that become this new person. And it's really nothing, again, until you can transform into that and accept that badge. Like, as soon as I am an alcoholic, I know it sounds stupid. I am an alcoholic. I tell people all the time, yo, I am an alcoholic. Here he comes again. Yo, I'm an alcoholic. Just shut up, man. Yeah. But I'm loving life, and they know it. They love it. Like, you had that last podcast where you're talking about your old friend, and you guys used to go out, and I mentioned this to we were on the phone. That really struck a chord with me, because a lot of people, when they're getting sober, are so worried, like, what's going to happen to my social life? Dude, if you have kids, shut up.
Yeah, the fear of losing community, or the fear of missing out, FOMO, that's a big part of it. But you have to remember this, man. And I'll probably do an episode on this soon. But your people are gonna be there.
Yep. Oh, shoot.
No matter, your people are gonna be there. And I hate to be like, if they weren't your friend, they're not gonna be around. But if they're not your friend, they're not gonna be around.
And maybe they're where you're at, and they don't know.
And maybe they're trying to figure out how to let it go as well. And if you came to them and was like, hey man, I'm getting sober. Yeah. I made the choice that I need to do some stuff in my life, and I have some work to do, and I'm getting sober. So if I feel they're like, many times for me, when I did that, people were like, dude, me too. Can I come with you?
Right.
Like,
or they're like, yo, this looks good on you.
So now when I go over to the people who I used to drink with at their house, and some of them still do, you know what I mean? And and I don't stigmatize people for drinking. I do not. That is not something that I do. But they'll have on their beer fridge, they've got a whole layer of NA drinks for me.
There you go.
And it's like, that's awesome.
That's cool, man. Yeah, I remember some dudes I used to hardcore party with. And after my son was born, I think he was like 1 or 2, my wife was really cool. She's like, you can go hang out with these guys, right? So yeah. And then I remember that was when I was like, I'm sober a couple years now. Maddie, wait, you're sober? And like, yeah. I'm like, oh, we thought something. And it was kind of one of those iffy situations. And I remember I had my pocket full of numbers, and my wife's number, which I didn't really want to bug her, but I had my support group with my sponsor stuff. We went to a couple of bars. By the way, if you're at that level and you feel secure, and don't drink just straight cranberry juice the whole night. That's a diuretic. So I learned that the hard way. Mix it with something. You got to have fun and change. By the way, life you can't be, no one wants that guy like, yeah, I'm sober. Let's talk about positivity today. Okay, thanks, man. No, you got to have some fun with life. You're living here now, the new life. So anyways, but we would go, and what was so funny about these two best friends of mine, I just saw one over spring break, and still, he's like, "You still sober?" I'm like, "Yeah, 11 years, man." He's like, "Whoa,"
in perpetuity,
right? But he's like, "I remember that." Still, he was like that first time he told us, what I mean, and he was like, they were like, "We're actually happy for you, because you were too much."
Yeah.
And you were just, it was too much. And that whole weekend I stayed sober, and they were just like, and they're like, you're such a cooler dude now. They actually got mad a couple times, because we would go out and do something like at a restaurant or whatever, and people were talking to me. I'm obviously an animated person, and there was always a group talking with me, and I'm telling stories while I'm drinking like my apple juice or whatever. And they're like, what's going on? I'm like, it's always been like, I had a thing going on when I was drunk, and but like, My personality now is this new amazing personality, and it doesn't matter whether they're drinking or not. Me, I'm alive.
Yeah.
And I'm living my life. I'm a dad. So yeah, I'm sure some of the people like we're hanging out with like, dude, do not want to hear about this guy's kid again. That was my thing. Sorry, man. But then I have old stories, so sometimes I sound like Keith Richards, like back in the day, we used to do this, but I'm sober now.
Yeah.
And that's something I cherish. I cherish now. It's great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
What's your biggest accomplishment since getting sober?
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Are you ready? This not nuclear. I guess so. We're kind of white. There's 4 of us, but this family that I have right now, I would say is when it comes to an accomplishment, my family. Because there's so much when you say the word family, let's get real here. Family is communication. Family is pain. There's fear in family.
Yeah.
Like I'm scared to shit of what my kids are going to experience. There's love in family. If you can be in a family was working on these things together in real time, that's an accomplishment because there's so much going on. Like in my past, there was stuff going on. No one gave my parents a handbook on how to do it or how to help. Like now, as I'm older and recovered, I'm like, Dad, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Grandpa hit you when you were a kid. I'm sorry that your wife died. Stepmom, I don't want. Unfortunately, there's an amend that couldn't be made. So bless it, release it. But I'm sorry that you haven't dealt with your mental illness. You know what I mean? Right now with my brother, I hope rehab works for you, but I'm sorry, but you have to figure that out, But my accomplishment is I accepted it. I accepted my alcoholism. That opened me up to this amazing family that I have. And being a dad, all the single people are going to be like, could you two just shut up? But it is domestic dad. That is the podcast we're on. That's the most amazing thing. Being in love with this wonderful woman that I have who stood with me through all this stuff and watched me change. Whew.
Amen.
And
Same.
then watching these kids. Oh my God, I got my hands full.
Yeah.
One of the things I just, like this, I tell my son all the time and my daughter, I go, my job is to be a better dad than my dad. And your job will be to be a better parent than us. And my son it's like this weird, like man, like warrior lock. He'll be like, I got you, Dad. And my daughter's like, yeah. And that's the goal. I want them to feel that richness when they get there. Don't cry on me because you're going to make me cry, man.
No, because that's special.
Because you should have seen it when I showed up, guys.
You just set an example.
Nick, your son, so adorable. I watched that. If you're in the dad's club, it'll melt your heart. You know what I mean? That was amazing just to see. I mean, that kid is happy. You know why? Because you know what you're doing. Yeah. And when you have a bad day, that kid's going to be okay because you've learned how to do this work. Your wife seems very, very, just like at ease. You know how they were beforehand. Like,
yeah.
Oh shit. What's he going to say?
Yeah, exactly. It was like walking on a tightrope or sitting around a time bomb or however you want to call it. But there was a lot of anxiety that lived inside my life and my kids because I wasn't who I am today.
If you guys want to stay sober too, who's out there in drunk land, we've already laid out some stuff for you. I say the last piece of the puzzle for me. Alcohol is selfish. You're selfishly killing yourself. You're selfishly taking energy away from other people. And I remember this one young kid just not so long ago. Like, so what do you do when you're sober? Like, what? I guess what can you do? I'm like, what do you want me to tell you?
Everything.
Want me to tell you get a plant? Go read some books? Give back is what I told him. I looked him right in the face. I got my nose like right up into his horrible breath. Give back. What do you mean? I go, I don't know. Take the residence academy for the city of Waterloo. Learn how your city government works. Well, what's that going to do? It's going to keep you busy. Maybe you'll figure something out. Volunteer for the Humane Society. Go feed a homeless person. Get involved in your kids' school activities. Do something
Volunteer
for the
yourself.
service commission at the church. See somebody who's in more trouble. Go to so many meetings where people are hurting and be the guy that gives hugs. Do that, would you? Do that. Give back. Like I do, like that's what, and it's hard and that's something I have to watch because I get real busy with work and with my kids stuff. So I have to actively either communicate with guys like you, or when I notice that people are coming in and hurting at work, like I reach out to other drunks. I have to do something that gives back. My thing I've taken up now is sending postcards to lonely people or family. Like, dude,
Love that.
we have a society that you can send a message to space in like 10 seconds of a poop emoji, and we're lonely as can be, and people are drinking and dying.
Yeah.
Dude, go on Amazon, buy a pack of postcards for like $6.99 to your door in 2 days, and write grandma. Do it,
Yeah.
or I have a friend who's in recovery. He's been for a while up in New York, Buffalo, and we send stuff back and forth. I send him postcards. My friend, I have a friend in Kansas whose wife died during the pandemic of, real tragic. He's got 3 or 4 kids, and we reconnected. Send him a postcard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
My nephews right now, my brother's in rehab.
Be part of their community.
Do something.
Yeah.
I mean,
Get involved.
You never know. That's going to, you know what? If you can do that and you're coming out of yourself a little like that, that's going to fill up your time.
Yeah. What advice would you give the next person who's thinking about getting sober today?
First thing, get a cup of coffee. You will find that is a wonderful thing. If you don't like coffee, iced tea, juice, there's that nice smoothie place. And find if you're getting sober today,
they're thinking about it.
If you're sitting on the couch right now like I was, and you've had that moment like I give up, get your smartphone out. Seriously, call Intergroup or check yourself in somewhere if that's what you need to be. If you checked yourself in somewhere, it didn't work, call something like Intergroup and get someone, like, check your keys. Like, don't, if that will help you out, check your keys somewhere and make them, go with somebody. Have them pick you up so that you have no escape route and you're going to walk off to a bar. It's not, in New York City, you can just walk, but here you got to drive places. So get someone to take you to a meeting and don't escape from it. No excuses. Reach out to someone you don't know.
Right.
Don't go to the same old places. Don't. I'm going to go to my wife one last time and tell her, I promise this time I'm getting sober. I'm going to start going to meetings. Shut up and just do it. Call Intergroup. I think they still call it Intergroup, right? And call just Google AA Blackhawk County. I know like 12 dudes right now, I think, who are on that list who will get in touch with you. And then ask them, I need to go to a meeting.
Or call me.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you. Call this guy. He's all good. There's some great ones. You know what I mean? And then that's what I'm saying. You know what I mean? That's going to get you out of it.
Yep.
Okay. Don't think about it. Just do it. Yeah. If you're trying to get sober today, you're legit looking at this beautiful sunny day, but inside you're screwed. Get that cup of coffee and make that phone call.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be the thing you're doing. And then you're on that storm on the ride or the phone call, just, you're working on the acceptance. Please. That's going to save your life. Call
Amen.
me and I'll be like, hey, listen, call this guy. He's going to get you to the meeting, or look up the schedule, walk. I encourage sometimes too, just to make it difficult for yourself not to escape it.
Yeah.
Walk to the meeting.
Yeah. That's
not in your car driving to the liquor store. Have someone take you. And then, you just do it.
Yeah. What's the biggest mess that you've cleaned up so far? I guess in the last 11 years, the biggest mess.
I would say there's been an ongoing thing with, I think the biggest thing, the mess was, obviously family. So I heard several people, I had to make amends and I had to earn trust back. So trust, I cleaned up my trust issues. My family can trust me. I've gained maturity in that regard. There was my history that I was telling you about. So I had anger at my father. I had, there's that, just, acceptance is hard throughout everything. You know what I mean? So you still no matter how you work on stuff and you'll still find something underneath a little stone in your mind. So I think the biggest mess that I cleaned up is now putting perspective. I'm 46 years old. I've learned what's our toxic traits. I learned how to handle toxic traits. I learned how to apologize. I learned how to be vulnerable in the right situations. I learned how to be I'm a business leader in the community, so I got to have that example. I do things by the book. I keep, like that clean. I try to treat people respect. When I mess up, and believe me, I work at a salvage yard. I have, I can be pretty mouthy, but learning when to say, like, I have actually like chewed out an employee or something like that I thought would, and it was probably pretty gruesome and unfair. And I will stop. And I'm like, oh, I need to call. That's not a way someone who's sober and a manager should act. Or call a customer back. Hey, listen, I was just that conversation. I've had people go like, why are you calling me? I'm like, dude, I was just a major a-hole on the phone to you. It dawned on me like 4 hours later. I just want to let you know, like, that's not how we conduct our business. That's not how I should respond here. Well, that's not necessary. I'm like, no, it is. That's something I learned. Also, too, like with my learning to listen more, and I'm not the best at it, but like with my wife, in my relationships with my family, so it's the biggest thing I've cleaned up is how to it's in the promises, man, how to handle those situations. I could care less about when people talk about being rich or whatever. I'd rather be like wealthy, and wealthy doesn't mean just money. Wealth could be lots of things. And I always tell people my wealth comes in hopefully what health I have left, and this family that I have.
Yeah.
And that's the most amazing thing, because now I can communicate with people, and you're going to have rough patches. You're going to fight, fight with people in the family, and then you got to learn how to say, I'm sorry. Yes. But not just say, I'm sorry, I'm excused, right? No, I'm sorry. Let me work on how this communication is going to be. That's the biggest accomplishment I would think that has been changing. And it's been awesome. Yeah. That's why I can walk around and be like, I'm pretty cool. I still have my moments.
I'm a rock star.
I still have my moments where I get unsure, like you get too much coffee going at me, or I'm too self-centered on a certain idea, but that's called being human. But with this transformation, though, I have tools.
Yeah.
Guys, keep the promises in your back. I guess that's my new thing. That's been, if you ask some of the guys I've talked to, like, that come to my office, I'm like, dude, you need a copy of this. It used to be always the 417. I would actually print off little chunks of the 417, the page 417 in the big book, like acceptance is the key. And that works for some people, you know what I mean? But I realized with some of these younger guys who are really lost, I'm like, dude, I'm going to put this in your face one more time. You see all these promises that AA is listing for you? That is all that you've been bitching about on your Facebook post.
Yeah.
Every day. I'm telling you, listen to me. If that's the beacon you need to search for to make that acceptance, then do it. Because it works for me. But you guys can never make it past 1 or 2 because you haven't hit the number 1 acceptance thing. But if you do that, it might take a year or so, depending on how bad you were at. This stuff will come true. And then you're going to come into my office and be like, yes. I'm like, oh, it's like all of a sudden, like we're all WWE wrestlers just meeting for like a party. Yeah, yeah. It's so lame, but that's true.
It is, dude.
Every time I see a text message from you or like Chris, or like I got my old sponsor text me every day. I'm not sure, like every day. Good morning, Matt. Morning, Dale. Morning, Matt. Morning. And it could just be like that. Or, hey, it's raining outside. Yes, it is. And it's cool because I'm like, oh, I got a text message from Dale. Good guy. You know what I mean? So.
Right on, man. Anything you want to leave us with?
There was a lot to unpack there, and I didn't see. I'm very proud of myself. I did get into. I really wanted to make it kind of push towards being sober and being an awesome dad. And we could do, if you ever do a show about being a dad, that would be my other favorite thing to do with you, because I could talk about that like for days. Like I've had people call me at my office and be like, yo, so my wife and I got divorced, and like, I don't know, my son kind of thinks I'm a weirdo. What do I do? I'm like, I don't know, like be a dad. Like, what do I do? I'm like, do some stuff. He's like, just
talk to him.
It's not that hard, man.
Yeah.
So I gave him ideas, and then you'd be surprised how many other old dads never taught their their sons how to be dads. So this is why we should talk. My advice, though, right now, and I wrote it in my notes. I wrote it in my notes right here, is the thing for sobriety is, obviously we push on acceptance. You and I, like, and you've had some very powerful statements in this podcast. Thank you. Acceptance. Play it backwards. Play it backwards or play it forwards. So play it backwards. Oh, now play it forward. What's going to happen when you take that drink? I'm telling you, folks, it'll take you a few times, and you'll play it forward and still do it. Now you've got to add another one to your play it backwards. Eventually, hopefully, you'll realize the pattern. And the last thing, I'm telling you, the thing that I had to have a navigational map or something to hold on to.
A beacon of light.
The promises.
Yeah.
I needed that. because before that, I think that's something we overlook sometimes in AA, and maybe not. But I know for me, for the first 7 times, it never was a thing for me. It was just something you read at the beginning. As soon as I started closing my eyes, I think that there's a guy that old guy that used to yell at me at the one meeting on 4th Street. I think he was the one that pointed out that look at the promises. Once I started closing my eyes every meeting, and to this day, when I read them, I'll read them and close my eyes afterwards. It's like that was like, this has got to happen, right? Because if this doesn't happen, I don't know what's going on. Either I'm not doing it right, or this is bull.
Yep.
Guess what? It happens. You just, if you do it, if you're doing it and you accept it, it's going to happen. I guarantee it.
Yep.
So that's all I got for that. Like Forrest Gump. That's all I got right now on that.
That's all I got to say about that.
That's all I got to say about that.
Right on, man. Well,
or
thank
if you're
you.
Drinking, stupid is as stupid does. You go.
It all comes back to Forrest Gump, bro.
Right? It's all the theme feathers right there. So
right on. Well, thank you, Matt. I appreciate you taking the time to do this with me, and it's been awesome.
Thanks, man.
You bet.